There you go.
I'd like to call this meeting of the February 16th, 2021 Marvin Planning Board to order. I see we have a quorum. We have one, let's see, me, Melinda, Kelly, Michael, Paul, Capileo. Did I get it right, Paul? I've been trying and I've been trying. So we're missing Kent and Mark. Kent is supposed to be signing in. Mark will not be here, but we do have a quorum. Adoption of the agenda. Has everybody reviewed the latest agenda? Any comments? I would like to add an item 9 under items of discussion. The 2021 Planning Board goals and priorities. I'm sure everybody thought about that since last month, didn't you? Any other comments on the agenda? Oh, it's up there. I see that Kent has joined us. So we should have everybody who we anticipate having online. I still hear no comments. Make a motion that we adopt the agenda as amended.
They need a second.
Need a second, someone? Kelly? Second.
Kelly?
Kelly beat you to it, Michael. All in favor? Unanimous? Nope, can't see Paul.
Yep, Paul has to speak.
Paul, speak or turn your video on. Paul must not really be there.
He might have had to run to the room or something.
We still have a quorum though.
A non-vote's a yes vote, so
Yeah,
you're good to proceed.
Non-vote counts as a yes, so we have a unanimous. All right. Adoption of the minutes for the 1/19/21 and 2/23/21.
2-3, not 2-23.
2/3/21.
And you can do this in one motion.
Has everybody read those? Any comments?
I'll just have one comment. It's just a comment though. Austin, I like the way that you use really old school language to describe my feelings about Paul leaving. Old fashioned way of saying that I was sad.
Okay. That's not a correction. That's just an attaboy.
I just thought it was funny. We don't need to correct it. It doesn't hurt anything.
Okay. Motion to adopt
As presented.
as presented.
I'll make a motion to adopt as presented.
Kelly, a second.
Is
Kent.
a second?
Kent did.
Kent, okay.
All in favor? I still haven't seen Paul, but we are unanimous. Who's that up on top?
That's the...
This is the applicant.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
CUP.
All right. Okay.
I think he's just saying hey.
All right. Okay.
You're good to go.
Moving forward, public comment period. We have no one here. Austin or Rohit, anybody signed up for public comment?
No one has contacted me, but we can ask if there's anyone on the
Anybody,
WebEx.
any of the people who are online wish to make a public comment in general at this point in time?
If you're here for one of the agenda items, now is not the time for your comment.
Yeah, thank you.
Other than this
Uh,
unknown person there, all the other people here are for agenda
items.
Yeah.
I see no
You're good?
request for public comment. I'll close the public comment period. Moving on, items of discussion. Discussion of the conditional use permit application 21-12576 for 1000 Spyglass Lane, a pool and a side yard.
Okay, so I'll get this started. I do want to mention one thing, which is that since I've sent out, well, there's actually a couple of things. One is that like I was, I have to just apologize. I'm supposed to send this out 15 days in advance, and because I was super busy 2 weeks ago, I didn't get around to it. So I would like, before we get started, to request for a vote to allow the review of this application to happen at this meeting, despite not having the materials 15 days in advance.
You need a motion to waive the
Yes.
15-day
Yes,
requirement.
yes. Can I have a motion to waive the 15-day requirement for
Or-
CUP materials?
Yeah, clarification, the ordinance does allow us to do that upon
Like if you did not get
approval
yeah,
from the board.
right.
I'm happy to make a motion to waive the 15-day requirement, because I could barely even see the picture that was
Mhm.
given, so if you've got additional updates, I'd love to see
Yes,
it.
I do, and
And-
I'll screen share it.
And we'll need a second.
Could I get a second?
Melinda.
Okay,
Melinda.
Melinda, second. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, all in favor? Unanimous?
Okay, great.
All right, now,
So moving on into the application, I did get an update today. Not only did I get a clearer picture, it's a little bit clearer picture of the application, but I also did get an update that they wanted to change the location of the pool equipment to the other side of the house, so it's not as close to that side property line. So this is the property. It's 1000 Spyglass Lane. It's on the corner lot, and their house is diagonal, which makes this. And I really had to look at the angle of the house. I was like, is this a rear yard abutting a side yard, or is it a side yard? And it's kind of more angled towards the side yard, so that's what I called it. With that said, it is a pool in a side yard. It's listed at 20 feet from the property line, 20 feet 8 inches, and from the original drawing, they have a pool. They have ligostrums planted all the way around, which would create screening. And the one thing that I was talking about before is that they did move. They moved the pool equipment from it used to be located here, and now they've proposed it to be over here, and they've added additional screening, trees to make it not visible from the road. I'm just seeing this today after some conversation that I had with the applicant. So they did eventually make that change. The pool equipment was about 15 feet from the property line when it was where it was before. So they were willing to make this change here. With that said, those are all the components of the application. The pool is 20 feet. The pool equipment is 46 feet from that side, and they do have the screening shown. So I also do want to, if there are any other questions, the applicant is present. So if there are any questions that I don't know the answer to, then I would invite the applicant to try to answer any questions.
good.
Do we have any drawings from the pool company? Which pool company is doing it? We have to be very creative here to see what's going on.
Yes, this is all I got. It's just a plot plan, and it is usually like the minimum that I do accept. When people submit renderings, that's going above and beyond. If I can tell where the pool is, and it meets our minimum ordinances, which is like the distance of 20 feet, the decking also minimum distance of 15 feet, but it doesn't appear that they have decking on the far side of the house. So it's just the decking is on the inside only, and the pool equipment is on the side of the house here. I hope you can see my mouse because I'm pointing with it. I'll also show the house on Google Maps in a second. But the original drawing was a little fuzzy, but this is a little more clearer. Does anyone, looking at this schematic, does anyone have any questions that they want to ask about the schematic? I can try to answer that.
Rohit, are the trees coming right off the corner of the house that'll block the pool from the road?
Let's see.
That right corner there.
Yeah, so these are where this is the row of trees that they are proposing to plant.
I can jump in here as the homeowner.
Sure, but before you do, I'll have to stop sharing screen and get a consensus from the board to allow the homeowner to speak at the table. Yeah.
All in favor of allowing the applicant to speak? Unanimous?
Okay, thanks.
Hey,
Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, number one, thank you for having me. Thank you for and getting us in before you today. I would just say that you know we already have an existing row of trees. I don't know if we're going to be able to show it on Google Maps if it's updated enough. It's even more blocked off from the street than
Yeah, sure.
that
Yeah, that's-
shows.
This is,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there you go. Like you can see like the trees. That row is it's quite high coming off the house there. I don't know if the picture kind of showed it that way.
The pool would be
back
back
there. Do we
there.
need under?
Yeah, that would be, I believe, where the pool equipment's gonna go. Yeah.
Do we need anything below, below that line or?
It really just talks about the height, but it doesn't really talk about the underbrush in the ordinance.
I'm just asking you.
Yeah, it just needs to be between 3 to 6 feet. But they are planting additional trees, so is that right? Like, that's what I gathered from that, you're planting additional trees?
Correct.
Okay.
And also, and I know this is might be a bit much, but the plan is always, and they're starting to be even more full than that. Those bushes are growing every day. The plan was always for the lower branches to drop down as they get longer and kind of give us even more privacy. To a true hedge.
Would this pool be running parallel to Firethorn Club Drive?
It would be, again, our house is on an angle, so it would be on the same angle as our home.
Go back to the,
Like we kind of candy corner the
the
angle
map, I guess.
of Spyglass and Firethorn.
Yeah.
So it's facing more Spyglass than Firethorn?
No, I mean, I would say it's facing more Firethorn,
Pull the, open that
Yeah,
up.
so like,
you know,
the
with
ability,
the pool.
your ability to see and if you can see, this is Firethorn Club on the right side, and then Spyglass is down here. So your ability to see, I mean, the pool is kind of from both streets. If I've drawn that in a way that makes sense. But that's why there's all this screening that's being proposed so that you wouldn't be able to see the pool from the street.
Rohit, can you exit the street view and give us a slight aerial view so we
Yeah,
can get a
sure,
better
sure.
understanding?
So the pool, yes, the
There we go.
pool
Thank
is
you.
being
All right,
proposed
if you can draw in the pool, that'd be great.
here. Let me draw that a little better. Okay.
Make it pretty, Rohit.
I just need to draw a square that looks
That
like
technically a rectangle's not a square.
Oh, shush. So that yellow is going to be the decking. It's going to be, let's see, some decking here too. I think this is actually a little moved over. And then the pool equipment was proposed over here. And that's about the size of it. So you can see in relation to Firethorn Club and Spyglass, it's really diagonal to both. It's not parallel to either.
Yeah, no, I see, you're right.
Hey, Rohit, can I just interrupt? I'm sorry.
Sure.
You drew the pool equipment now on the Firethorn Club Drive side of the house.
Right.
The plans that we received, it was actually on the Spyglass.
Yes,
side.
they've changed that. I actually made that comment to the contractor, and they made that change.
Oh, fantastic, okay.
Yeah, they agreed. That would be a little too close for, you know, having to debate that. It would
To
be
the
too close to the
property
property line. Like, yeah, so the note was, the pool equipment was located over here, but they have now, proposed to put it back here.
I've got two questions. One is, the house kind of directly behind it, I think it's facing Spyglass.
Yes.
It looks like there's a lot of tree coverage around that. Do they truly have, like, screening? I saw a hill, but I don't really know that corner, so.
Yeah, so the most of the wooded area that you see on this aerial is on that 1004 Spyglass property, so that means the applicant will still be, you know, responsible for placing that screening on their property. Is that roughly correct? Most of the trees are on the neighbor's property?
Yes, you know, I never saw where their property line is, but yes, where our end, assuming theirs begins exactly where ours ends, yes, most of them are on their property.
Right.
And they are quite elevated, you know, above us.
I mean, I would love to see if you're on Spyglass in front of the house that faces Spyglass, the road, just to get an idea of what the neighbor is.
Yeah, so this is the hill. This applicant's house is, you know, quite a lower elevation from the. I don't know if this really conveys it, but it is quite a lower elevation. Does that convey it here?
I would say that doesn't do it justice, yeah.
It really doesn't. Like, this house is all the way up here, and this house is all the way down here. Does that even do it justice? Not quite. I think there's a drop of over 50 feet, where like the relationship to these people's houses is not like they're right next to each other. They're on like different stories, really.
Yeah.
Well, that helps my next question, which was, it looked like there was a covered porch behind the pool. in the drawing.
No, right. Well, you can see it right there, that's where the covered porch is.
So that remains, and the pool is beyond the porch?
The pool would be, you know, sitting right below that porch, basically, is the spot.
Okay, because in the drawing, it looks like it's the pool, and then behind that is a covered porch, like closer to.
Oh, no, that's just an annotation. That's an annotation pointing to where the covered porch is.
Oh, okay, well, that line made it look like there was.
Yeah.
They have
Covered
something on the
porches.
other side. That's awfully
Over
close.
here. Yeah.
Alright, yeah, the importance of. Alright,
Yeah.
cool, that takes care of my question.
Any other questions or comments? I think we're getting used to this, it's going way too fast.
Yeah.
No comments from any of his next door across the street neighbors. Anybody had anything to say?
No, they did not.
Yeah, like, it helps if you would get a written testimony from your next door neighbor at 1004.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah, suppose you don't need one for today, but the council will review this on March 9th. And, the council usually has a lot fewer questions when they see a written testimony in support of the pool, so.
Okay,
Okay?
so just to be clear, there's no, we'll get their written approval, but there be no approval until March 9th.
Right. When the council votes to approve, that's when your pool will be approved.
We just
Gotcha.
make, yeah,
We're just a recommending body. We're
Yeah.
not an approval. We're just recommending.
Okay.
any
And
other,
with that, I'm good to make a motion to approve as submitted.
I guess as the most recent revision
yeah, is,
shows, yeah.
And they'll need a second.
and a second by anybody? Melinda, okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Rohit, I need to see everybody.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Alright, 1, 2, 8. Unanimous? Alright, thank you.
Okay. All right, thanks. We'll be in touch.
Okay, I appreciate it, and I'll work on that, I'll get that written approval for you and submit it accordingly. Thank you very
Great.
much, everybody, again, for your time and everything you do.
Thanks.
Good.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Alright,
We'll leave meeting.
Hey,
moving.
Rohit, if we can, before we leave that, I heard you say that this is the minimum you minimum you require. If we could revise that going forward, it's certainly it's not his fault, but if we could get some elevations and better drawings and really see instead of going on Google Earth, because the pool companies generally do that. It
Yeah.
just makes it a little easier. I mean, I know the area, I know the house and everything, but if you don't live here, you don't know that.
Right, right. And the reason what I say is, I accept a sketch as long as I can determine the things that we regulate, then I don't really need to see any more. But I do get what you're saying, and I would tend to agree that for when you have to show this to a planning board and council, you should have a higher standard of what you present. But I can't make anyone do anything more than the minimum.
Speaking of, yeah, Rohit and I had a conversation, between last month, I guess, and now, sort of general conversation about presentations. And I suggested maybe going forward, if he could, whether it be something like this, and he could sort of give us a synopsis of it. The ordinance says minimum distance this. The plan, the applicant says, we're going to propose this, whether it be distances or landscaping or, the things that the ordinance addresses. It would help us sort of, instead of having to ask more questions, if he sort of gives it to us, in a cover sheet kind of
Yeah.
thing, it may help us moving more expeditiously through these things.
I agree, John. I think that's a great idea.
Right.
And, we're learning as we go still. So, it's not
Is there,
nothing against anything that Rohit's done in the past, just trying to expedite and learn going
No.
forward.
No, we're just, like you said, we're just trying to get better and, make the presentations easier for us to approve. That's
Yeah.
all. That's all we're really after.
Right.
Okay,
is there not language in the ordinance or the requirements that says a clean copy? Or a,
There isn't really much.
that was
Yeah.
the first one, it was so much stuff on it, I was like,
Right.
it's just really hard to read.
I don't know off the top of my head if it says anything like that. It really only talks about the regulations themselves, like what you're looking for.
okay, and maybe it would, and I know that you'd asked him for
Yeah.
better drawings
Like,
before.
I've worked with him for years now, and that's always the quality of drawings that he submits. And if the pool itself meets the regulations, then I have to approve it. So
Well, maybe it's something we look at the ordinance to require some drawings then.
Right.
We could make a change to the ordinance that requires some drawings that, that's something maybe council could take up or you can take up because
sure.
it just makes it easier,
Yeah,
and I think that was very tough, Generally speaking, pools are pretty easy rubber stamps, but that one was a little rough.
and
Mhm.
of course,
When that was originally proposed, wasn't there equipment inside of the setback, which would have been technically, it was in violation?
No, we were talking about how the setback for this property was 15 feet in the side yard because Firethorn was built like that. Our normal side yard setback is 20 feet, but for Firethorn it's 15 feet on the side yard. And that's because they were built before our zoning regulations really took place. And that pool equipment was exactly 15 feet from the side yard. So it was within the setback, but just barely.
so we had, it was a non-conforming when Firethorn,
Well, I wouldn't say non-conforming. It's just more like those were the regulations, so they stick. When we adopt something that's stricter, that's already built, so we don't.
And then
Revise
the
their-
issue of being a corner lot, that only applies to the roadside?
Right. So the lot, for example, is facing Spyglass. The side that is adjacent to Firethorn Club Drive, that side has a 25-foot yard setback, 25-foot side yard setback.
Okay.
Just so that there's more room between the house and the road.
It seems like most of our issue applications have been corner lots. Maybe we'll just have to change the ordinances. We don't want to accept applications for corner lots.
Well, that's what I tried. I tried to, but both boards wanted to see CUPs, both the rear yard, abutting the side yard, and side yard. So that's fine.
Yeah, I was just trying to.
Yeah.
Okay, let's sort of move forward, trying to keep from getting too far off. Discussion of the final plat review for Marvin Gardens residential subdivision.
Okay, so this is one where I did include the approved construction plan, site plan. So there's two very similar, and they're very similar for a reason, plats that you see in the packet, and I'll have to pull it up so I can see it here with you. Okay, so the one is the construction plan that was submitted and approved almost a year ago, and the other is the final plat that would allow them to actually subdivide the property into those 25 homes and common open spaces. I'm going to start sharing my screen in a minute. This is really a kind of procedural day for this application because they're proposing the final plat, which is exactly the same. It's exactly the same as the construction plan. So if you've had a chance to look at it, there are no differences. With that, but it is a major subdivision. So the final plats would have to go through planning board and council.
This is the plat.
Yeah.
Right.
So what you see here on the screen is the final plat. If approved by planning board and council, the applicant would be, authorized to build and sell those lots. Essentially, is the step that we're at.
Okay, the other one that shows.
This is the site plan that
That's
was.
the site plan that we did, as you said, I guess a year ago.
Yeah.
Because that entailed a change from what was in the original.
Right, a minor change. It did.
Those lots in the middle.
Right, it did reorient those 4 lots in the middle a little bit. It squeezed together a couple of lots, but that was from the construction plan to the original zoning.
Yeah.
And you have reviewed and approved those changes a
Yeah.
year ago. The comparison from the construction plan to the final plat is exactly the same. So today we're just looking for, because it is a major subdivision, the final plat has to be approved by the planning board and council, but because it's a conditional district, the final plat is exactly the same as was originally proposed. So if there are no further questions, I think if there are any questions about this, you can ask, but I think this should be the most straightforward thing.
Yeah, I think we had relative amount of conversation a year ago regarding that revised construction plan. And as I recall, the drainage and the sizes, the orientations of those lots in the middle, and buffering and stuff.
And all of that, I think, there were some revisions made with the engineer, and we went out there and handled some drainage issues. And that's kind of in the past now.
Yeah.
We're now just looking at, the final plat, which is, the construction's already been approved. This is for the final plat so that they can actually record, the subdivision at the tax office and start building and selling those houses.
Any questions from anybody? Silence.
Okay.
Does that mean everybody is okay? If so, I would entertain a motion to approve. Let's see everybody.
As
please.
presented,
Huh?
Oh, yeah.
approved as presented.
Yeah.
Approve as submitted.
Who was that?
Sound like
Yeah.
Michael?
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 Michael, all right, second.
Kent?
Kent, all right. Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next tonight is a discussion of the zoning text amendment 21-12592 to remove the minimum acreage requirement. The requirement is 25 acres.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Of 25 acres from the definition of a rural subdivision, which is defined in chapter 150.015 of the definitions.
Okay, excellent. So we also do have the applicants of the zoning text amendment here. Essentially, we do have the definition of a rural subdivision. Let me pull that up real quick.
Out of curiosity,
Sure.
when was this written? Because
It was written in
my
20.
neighborhood does not meet, I think my neighbor must have been grandfathered in.
No, it's just, it was written very recently, 2016, 2017, and only one neighborhood, Three Pond Acres, was ever, since then built using the rural subdivision, rural subdivision, regulations, and, there is one more approved but not built, right next to Meadowlark, that was, designed using the rural subdivision ordinance. But yes, it was adopted around 2016, 2017, in order to provide a means for something between a minor and a major subdivision, where if you were building a low impact, large lot subdivision, you could have up to 8 lots and go through a much more expedited process. So that said, there is a property now, and the applicants are the designers for the subdivision. They're seeking to do a rural subdivision on a 19-acre property. It's 6 lots, and all of them actually front existing roads, so there isn't even a new road. And because of the definition of rural subdivision including a minimum acreage of 25 acres, they want to see if the planning board and council would be amenable to removing that one requirement, which I've said in my staff analysis. I think the other requirements of a rural subdivision do uphold the character of Marvin, and if they're to build 6 lots on 19 acres, which is almost it's an average of 3 acres, like, per lot, it would definitely fit within the Marvin land use plan and character.
Now, back up just a little bit, so I'm starting to get my hands around some of the stuff you said.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of, this fits in between what, and the type, 2 other zoning classifications.
Yeah, there were, before this rural
Yeah.
subdivision was adopted, there were 2 types of subdivisions, a minor subdivision and a major subdivision.
Minor was where
Where-
you had 6 acres and you wanted to divide it into 2 lots, or 3.
Yeah, 2 or 3 or 4 lots.
Yeah, all right.
And you just wanted to do it, no new roads, no utilities, just divide a lot to up to 4 lots. So
Yeah.
that's very small.
Okay,
And then there is a major subdivision where you have to go through the entire gamut of, PRG, public input meetings, planning board and council for every one of the 3 steps: sketch plan, preliminary construction plat, and final plat. So they made a rural subdivision, which procedurally is similar to the minor subdivision, where you just have to basically get an approved sketch plan, an approved construction plan in this case, but a lot fewer steps. And it was reasonable. It was found reasonable at the time because a large lot subdivision, it wouldn't really need that much going into the construction plan. As most of you were here when the more recent rural subdivision was being discussed. There's not much to it. There's one road at most, and there's 8 lots at most, just built in the woods of the property. And this application, while it really is only presented here for context, it just goes to show that if you do believe this, that a rural subdivision can very much feel and be rural on less than 25 acres.
Yeah, I'm trying to, trying to get my hands around why it needed to be a minimum of 25. I'm not sure of a detriment for it being less than 25.
Right, I tend to agree with that.
Didn't you say it was
I
arbitrary?
was here when that was put together.
Oh, yeah.
I do generally recall that the 25 was somewhat arbitrary, but I don't remember it being based on any studies or anything along those lines. Frankly, it was, I seem to recall, as I said, it being somewhat arbitrary and actually being sufficient to accommodate the goals of the particular applicant that came before us.
Right.
So I'm not opposed to changing the number. I think I'd be a little concerned about going as low as 8. Was that the proposal, going 8
No, there's
acres?
the proposal is simply to remove the minimum tract requirement, which would allow you to build. I mean, a rural subdivision will still require that the lots have to be 2 or 2.5 acres each. So
if we do away with the minimum acreage, then you could theoretically get a 2-lot subdivision that one of them is at least 2.5 acres and then the other one would be 2.
well, you could already do a minor subdivision because that allows you up to 4 lots, and it's an even simpler process.
Yeah, I'm trying to,
Can you build a road on a minor subdivision?
Oh, right. That would be the only difference. You could build a road.
So here's a very critical point I want to raise, and I don't know if other people have this concern, but I recall the first time we went down this path, I felt very burned, so to speak, by the fact that this ultimately proved to be an end run on the gates issue, on the ability to gate a road. Because what ended up happening was the people who got this application approved put a gate on the road because it was, quote, private. Marvin doesn't allow private roads, so we got twisted around a pretzel.
I'm not,
I would like to make sure that
He's
doesn't happen
right.
again.
okay.
So I'd like to put something in here. If we're going to do something about the acreage, I'd certainly like to make it clear that you can't gate the road that you build.
I will say that that's something that's also twisted me up, to say the least, which is that in one section of our ordinance, we don't allow a gate, and when the rural subdivision was adopted originally, they did include the provision that rural subdivision streets are allowed to have a gate. And that's how you see, we can look out our window every day and see that a subdivision that was built in 2017 was allowed to put up a gate because they wanted to put that in the provision of a rural subdivision. So
Yeah, see, correct me if I'm wrong here, Rohit, but I think the way the rules work is Marvin doesn't allow private roads. And you can only put a gate on a private road. So I think as a technical matter, we don't really not allow gates. We just don't allow private roads.
no, we explicitly don't. We explicitly don't allow gates.
Okay, all right, so.
Yeah, I've asked
fine.
that before, but I haven't seen that. So,
Right, I can pull it up.
But
I can pull it up.
somehow, because this was a private road that went into this rural subdivision, a gate was put up and there was nothing we could do to stop it.
Right. Again, this is something that's been knocking my head for a while, because a lot of people, a lot of neighborhoods come around asking for gates, and I just have to kind of have to hold my tail between my legs when they sit here in this office asking me that, you know, we want to talk about putting up gates, and right outside our window, a neighborhood was built in 2017 that was allowed to have a gate, even though, like I'm about to try to pull up,
Okay.
there's a clear ordinance. This ordinance says we don't allow gates, and then that ordinance says a rural subdivision is allowed gates, and somehow they, you know, they made it happen. So I mean, to just,
Well, so you're saying, because I don't recall this, you're saying that the actual statute or the ordinance for the rural subdivision allowed gates?
yes, and I'll, hold on, I'll try, I'm trying to find both things at the same time.
Appreciated you pull that up.
Yes.
My recollection was that the applicant kind of pulled I'll say a fast one. I mean, I really feel like the wool was pulled over my eyes anyway. I can't speak for the other board members. But then what happened was when we raised this as an issue, they threatened to seek de-annexation.
Right.
And so we were sort of faced with okay, let them put up the gate or face the annexation, and ultimately the weight of all of that just, I would use the phrase turn a blind eye to what had just happened.
Yes, that's essentially, just in my reading the minutes to try to justify how they got gates is essentially how it happened. It was not, I mean, the way that they adopted an ordinance at the time and the way that they allowed the gates, in contrast again to this highlighted section, not like you were saying before, that it's not like a two-step, it is a explicit use of vehicular traffic obstruction across streets shall be prohibited at all times. So then I look at this and I hold my hat to this when I tell all sorts of people that, you know, they represent their HOA and they come, like, you know, Weddington Chase, Tullamore, they come and say, we want a gate, and then I tell them because of this you can't have one, but now I'm going to try to find...
Well, again, I'll also say, isn't there a provision in our rules that says you can't have a private road? And the only road that can be gated is a private one.
Right.
You can't gate a public.
You can't, yes, you can't gate a public road. If you gate it, then it's not public anymore.
Well, I mean, I guess you could put it that way, but once a road is public, it can't be taken from the state or the town.
Right.
Putting a gate on it, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Now, what I understood our rules generally allowed is, listen, roads can be private for some period of time while a place is being built out, but they must be plotted to be turned over to the state. And that's why you can't put a gate on it, because you've got to arrange to turn it over. Again, I don't know how this particular road has a gate on it, and how it's like not being aimed to be turned over to the state. I don't know how that's working out.
Right. I'm currently trying to find that ordinance that you're talking about.
So Paul,
Yes.
and Kelly, so if Meadowlark or Marvin Estates were being built today, that both have private streets,
they wouldn't be allowed to
they
be
could
built
not
the
be,
way, yeah.
they couldn't be built
They would
today.
have to be dedicated. All neighborhoods that are being built today, all the roads are being turned over to us after the
Okay,
neighborhood's
I'm just
completed, yes.
clarification. Paul,
Yes.
your comments,
Yeah, I mean,
Paul,
Meadowlark could technically gate just because we're grandfathered in to a private road, and we really can't even turn it over, because even if my neighbors don't want to, but even if we did, it would take so much money for us to get the road up to a quality that the state would even accept. So we
Yeah.
can't afford to.
no, I'm not disputing that. I
We
was
start
just
with gravel, so.
understanding that. And Paul, all of this conversation goes to point out why you are not allowed to walk away from this board.
Thank you. Regret right here. You see this, Mr. Austin?
You cannot not work on this board.
2007 I think it was when he first joined the board.
So can I ask a question? Because I was not actually on the board when this rule was created for this particular development.
Paul was the only one who was.
I'm not sure, but why would this, so my understanding of that, those properties and that piece of land is that it's almost like a family compound, right? It's like owned by a family. That's the reason they wanted it to be private, because it is only family members over there, and, you know, one of the people living there probably should have some sort of some security, right? So why would they not?
The homes can be sold, and family members can pass away, and so on, you know what I mean? So 20 years from now, 40 years from now, it's not necessarily gonna be a quote family commune.
Right, I'm just wondering why it wasn't, why, because in order to get a private road, why it wasn't, put forth as a different type of property instead of an actual subdivision. Right, is it because we don't allow multiple families living on one piece of property?
Correct, it was a large acre tract on which multiple dwelling units were to be built, and so it had to be subdivided.
I need a double time this.
Think of that from the town's point of view. Somebody comes to the town and says, I've got this beautiful, whatever it was, 30 acre reserve. I want to put 4 houses on it. What do you think? Sounds like a great idea. We're gonna leave most of the trees. Sounds like a great idea. Okay, how are we gonna do this? Well, then we gotta build a road. Okay. And then it got a little complex. But, you know, the town was generally speaking quite in favor of having a very large rural subdivision in the center of town. It wasn't until the end that, oh, well, yeah, but we're gonna gate it so no one can just, because we started talking about putting a sidewalk in. They were like, well, why would you want a sidewalk? Sidewalks are required technically for subdivisions now.
Yeah, that's also true.
Yeah.
We don't want stuff. We don't want a sidewalk. Last thing we want is people walking around in here. Oh, but it's gonna be in the center of town. Well, sorry, we're putting up a gate, and then that's how it went down. It was, like I said, it was I'm not gonna fault the applicants, maybe they didn't mean to pull a bait and switch, but it felt very bait and switch-ish when it all came down. So what I'm trying to do tonight is I just want to make sure that that mistake doesn't happen again.
Right, and so, I mean, I think actually this is a really good opportunity, and oh grief, I wish we had talked about this earlier so I wouldn't be searching for this ordinance right here and now, but there is an ordinance that allows the provision of a gate on a road in a rural subdivision, and I suppose, like the conversation could drive towards allowing this text amendment with the condition that the text amendment also includes the deletion of that section that allows the gate on a rural road. As soon as I can find it.
Yeah, we really need to see that.
Right.
I mean, the fact of the matter is this applicant doesn't need this issue, right? Because they're not even gonna have a road, they're just gonna have 4 driveways out of the main road.
Right.
Which, with all due respect, I wonder, do they really want that? Do they really wanna have 4 driveways out onto a road that is becoming a pretty busy road?
And I would also ask about, so you just mentioned that all new roads must have a sidewalk?
Yes, we have an engineering specifications manual, which outlines the cross sections, the exact design of a road that we would accept. And so if it's not built to one of 5 different cross sections in that manual, then, you know, it's not up to standard. And so from the very beginning, we make sure that the applicant designs a road that is one of those 5 cross sections, like we did with Mr. Odell's property.
Yeah.
There was a rural subdivision, but
Yeah, he's got, what, sidewalk on?
yeah,
one
you had
side?
to put a sidewalk on one side, and Bell Grove is the same way. They're gonna build a sidewalk as they're building the houses, but they have to do, you know, the road, the drainage ditch, a sidewalk on one side at least. So that's one of the cross sections that's in our manual.
So
And all 5 cross.
Sidewalks,
Sorry.
sidewalks are expensive.
Well, the theory is that Marvin was intending to be an open, welcoming community that encourages cross traffic from one community to another. So you build sidewalks to enable people to just walk around from neighborhood to neighborhood. And, if you think about the idea of having an ice cream store in downtown Marvin or the Heritage District, you certainly want to have walkability around there. And, you go to walk your dog one day after getting an ice cream and you see a road just to your right, you say, oh, it looks like a lovely place to take a walk. You start to walk down and boom, there's a gate. See you later. Not very welcoming and open.
So my only comment about the sidewalk is, that I've just never been in a rural neighborhood with a sidewalk. It's just not really it doesn't necessarily make sense for rural. I don't know, but I mean, I live in a different neighborhood too, so sidewalks don't make sense in our neighborhood. But horse trailer, yes.
So again, if you think about the way the town was developing as it was transitioning from horse farms or cotton farms to subdivisions, and again, the question is, do we want to be open and inclusive and welcoming, or do we want to have sort of enclaves of privacy? And historically, I think we were moving toward the open, welcoming, easy walkability, that sort of thing. Now, if we want to shift back to privacy and enclaves, well, that's up to people to consider. But this was a move. It was trying to take us while we were transitioning into a suburban community to, let's retain our heritage. So that's great, and it makes sense, and that's where we started getting into some of these, well, what about a sidewalk? Well, do you really want a sidewalk? Well, it would be nice to be able to walk down that street. Hell no, you don't want people walking down that street. And that's how this kind of became what it was.
So back to this specific applicant, I actually don't have a problem with what they're trying to do. I actually agree that 25 is a lot. I actually wouldn't mind having a minimum. I'm not quite sure what that threshold is, but 'cause I guess minor subdivisions are 4 lots, and then if it's like at least 2.5 acres, whatever of that under 12 acres. Because I don't really see why you would want a rural subdivision. Why would it be a subdivision if it's 5 houses?
Because it gives you a road. It gives you the ability to build a road. Whereas a minor subdivision, you can't build a road.
Yeah.
But for this applicant, they don't need a road.
Well,
But that's where you could do the minor, I guess, right?
So,
Minor's only.
Yeah, minor's a max of 4.
so just doing the math,
Okay.
if it's a maximum of 8 lots, period, half of them have to be at least 2.5 acres, and other half 2 acres. So the math says the minimum size, assuming you don't have to build a street, the minimum lot size would be 18 acres.
Right, and if that's like, there is no minimum in the ordinance, but you still need at least 18 acres to build 8 houses, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
To build 8.
To build 8 houses, right.
But 8 is a max. It's not.
Right.
And I
Yeah,
don't
that
know-
would be a
I
max,
don't
yeah.
know, why is 8 a max? Like
Again,
my neighborhood has.
So I was
no, it's not about, Meadowlark was in like lowercase r rural subdivision. It is a rural area, but the capital R rural subdivision in our ordinance was written in 2017. It wasn't meant to retroactively apply to existing subdivisions like Meadowlark and Marvin Estates.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying, why would we want to put a maximum lot? If we're trying to take away the 25 acre.
I was trying to figure out why it was there.
Why max it to 8?
All right, so a simple lot split.
Into regular subdivisions.
Right, I think that's actually a really good point. Once you start doing more than 8, you kind of circumvent the you know, the actual procedure of a subdivision. You might have 100 lot subdivision. I don't know, not that, you know, you'd have a 500 acre tract, but you know, there is a 60 acre tract that we might annex in the future, and if we let, you know, 40 homes get built in a 60 acre tract or whatever, 30 homes, that's, I don't know, I'm not doing the math right now, but Paul made a really good point there, which is that this very expedited process should really only be reserved and allowed for very low impact developments.
And well, do we have to actually change the ordinance, or can we just grant a variance? This is the question. And I'm not sure we should debate changing a whole ordinance over one situation, when it seems
Right.
to be
And
so,
I thought about that too. In fact, I did discuss the qualifications of a variance with the applicant, and I kind of felt like they weren't eligible for a variance because the variance, you have to show a hardship, something that is extremely unique to your property, and the fact that you know, they're precluded from applying for a rural subdivision because their tract is too small. It's not a hardship. They could very easily just apply for a major subdivision. I mean, I say very easily as if it's a lot is easy, but you know, they can still get the exact same subdivision, but just through a different process. So this is more of a yes.
And Rohit, my reaction is, I think we should encourage development like this, right? This is
Yes, that was my first reaction as well.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not objecting to it, and I'm probably okay with changing the 25 acre thing. I think we might want to just pick a number like 12 until the next time something comes along and we say, okay, maybe we want to change it to 9, but you know, I think we ought to keep it as a reasonable number, just so that this is limited in its application.
Sure.
But I also want to build in something that it be clear that if there is a road needed, it will not be able to be gated.
I did finally find the ordinance. Can I put it up on the screen? Regrettably, it was in the sign section.
Sign.
Signs, like the signs that you put for like identifying a, you know, the shop name of a building. It was in the sign section, and I'm baffled by that. The rural.
Where is it?
It's section 151.152, and it just maybe it's the same thing as repeated somewhere else, but it goes into a lot of detail about you know if you're seeking to have a rural entryway gate, you know they have to function like this. They have to look like one of these. They have all these provisions for rural entryway gates, and that I don't know if this happened to be how they got it, but there's all, and it's not even commercial.
So there's a healthy bit of discussion.
Right.
About it, and all sorts of limitations on
Right.
what it could look like and so on.
Right.
Okay? Well, then obviously we can't just in a single word say gates aren't allowed and then have 6
Right.
paragraphs of and what they should look like.
Right.
Well, you know, back to the other thing though, and it doesn't have anything to do with what's the rural subdivision ordinance, right? Since the gates is not in that part of the ordinance.
It's really not.
Well, it's not, John, in this particular case.
And I'm not,
This applicant doesn't need it.
yeah,
But notwithstanding, if we're going to do something to this acreage, I want to make sure we do something about the gates. And look, when I say I want to make sure, it is my recommendation, it is my desire. I can't do anything other than make suggestions.
yes you can stay on.
Well,
All right, but anyway, let's add that on our future to-do list, is what we need
Yeah.
to do there, right?
I think that's what I'm hearing as well, which is that, since the applicant is not seeking a road, it might be too much of a burden to ask that they include
Yeah,
the language that removes all that gate stuff from our ordinance, and instead.
So what's the action item here?
The action hold on, I'm not there yet. The action, there might be two action items. To consider this text amendment independently of the gates issue and to direct staff to remove the language that allows rural subdivisions to have an entryway gate.
all right, but back to, now, what we really are discussing now is what to change 25 acres to.
Right, if anything. Do you want to change it to 12 instead of not having a minimum?
Well, if there's a lot requirement, do we really need a minimum acreage for the overall parcel itself?
Yeah, and that's what I thought too.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that does for us. Our
Well, in
expert.
theory, then you could get a road and circumvent the minor subdivision rules.
Right, but for 2 to 8 houses, unless you really need that road, you're not gonna want to invest as a developer. You're not gonna want to invest in a road. So in theory, I suppose you could build one road for 2 houses, but why would you? Well, actually, there is there's an 8-acre parcel in Marvin Estates. It could be a rural subdivision of 3 or 4 lots. If they didn't want the new lots to front on Marvin Road, they could build a short little road that's like a little lollipop, 50, 100 feet long, just for an example.
Anyway,
This would
think
not be used by, quote, a developer, Rohit. This would be used by wealthy people who want to eat off their enclave.
Right. So I guess that's why the recommendation I would say is for now to allow the applicant to move forward if you don't have a recommendation for a minimum size that a rural subdivision should be, but then in some sort of urgency, direct staff to remove all the language that does allow gates from rural subdivisions. What
was the other one again? That was the second
That would
one.
be my recommendation, yes.
Right, and since we are, I'll get to this in number 6, but now that I have an assistant, we have the ability to do a lot more things, and that code reorganization adoption can include that kind of revision. We can talk about that in a few.
all right, so
Let
back
me
to,
try and understand though, Rohit. I didn't think that we allowed private roads in Marvin. So does that mean somewhere in that zoning ordinance that we somehow allow private roads?
I didn't quite find that.
Because my understanding is when you build a road in this village, you have to plat it so that it will ultimately be turned over to the state. I thought that was a requirement.
Right.
And obviously, if you put a gate on it, you won't be able to do that. The state's not gonna take over a road that's got a gate on it.
Right, and I don't I did see the rural gates, but I don't think I've seen anywhere, and that doesn't mean that it isn't anywhere, but I don't know if I've seen that a rural road is allowed to be private. In contrast,
See, it has to be that, right?
right, because the rural subdivision across from us was allowed to be private in 2017. So,
Now, again, it may be that we're still waiting for them to turn the road over to the state. Hold your breath.
right.
But
Could we,
Somebody's got to mute themselves. No.
somebody's doing some mad typing. Is there a way just to research, to make sure that there is no language in the ordinances allowing new private gated roads? And then go in into the signs area, wherever that's there. And rewrite the language to leave that section there, but have it apply to existing rural or existing private rural roads prior to X date, so like grandfather date, so my subdivision. John, are you rural as well?
Huh?
No, they're not.
No,
They're Marvin owned.
yeah, we belong to Marvin now. Once upon a
So there
time,
are a couple, but there are a couple of neighborhoods that, you know, we all have private rural roads. And if we wanted to gate, that would be the ordinance that we would have to follow. But it should only apply to existing
Yeah,
rural
I'm not
private
sure
roads.
I'm not sure you could follow that, Kelly, because in order to follow that gate ordinance, you have to already be a rural subdivision, which I don't know whether your property would be.
Right,
We
yeah.
are,
I
we're
mean,
rural and we're private.
Well, but what I mean is, are you less than eight lots? If you have a parent tract of more than 25, do you fit these size requirements?
No, we're much bigger because we're grandfathered, so that's the thing.
Grandfather is probably the wrong word, right? Is that you're there, and if you wanted to do something new, then you'd have to meet the new rules, but you're not doing anything new, so you're good. But you're asking, could you put up a gate using the rural gate rules to do it? And I think the answer would be no, because you're not a rural subdivision within the definition of the code. Does that make sense?
I think
No, I get what you're saying, the definition of the new code, but we could not be any more rural.
well,
But you gotta meet this rural.
No,
Right.
I
We're off
get
track.
what you're saying.
yeah, we are a little off track here.
Kelly, Paul, we really are off track as it relates to this agenda item. You know, and I understand it needs discussion, and Austin already put it on the to-do list, or the action item list.
Right. That Gates discussion might have to happen in a different,
Yeah.
at a different time.
Yeah, but I mean, it is not even addressed in the rural subdivision ordinance as it's written. It came up somewhere else, you know, in the ordinances,
Right.
that we'd have to correct it there.
Right, which I do accept it is within the scope of this agenda item to say, yeah, we can consider adjusting the definition of rural subdivision as long as we urgently find out how to not allow gates in any future rural subdivisions.
Yeah. But
So,
we're
but,
not
you know,
approving
understand.
anything in here, we're not deleting anything in here right this moment as the ordinance or this ordinance is.
Well, could we say something to be clearer about the road in this ordinance? In other words, could we say if a road is to be built, it must be platted to become public?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it wouldn't matter if another section allowed gates because public roads can't be gated.
Okay, great, Paul.
Wow.
Once again, you're not allowed to leave. You just keep digging your hole deeper.
Well, there is a concept of, causing problems here is by saying something like that in this section, do we cause a problem somewhere else? So.
Well, I mean, I think.
The consequences, I think it's called.
No, I don't know, because it's like a section of the ordinance would now exist but not be allowed to be applied if, let me pull up this, if say, no more than one new road is created, which must be platted as public, or something like that, whatever is legally enforceable, and then request that that is the text amendment instead of all the other sections that refer to gates instead of removing them, and we can deal with that later. But for now, we can put a very strong band-aid on the issue by making all rural roads also be required to be public.
And backing up,
So,
do we change 25 to 12 right this moment or something?
I mean, in order to have more than 4 lots, you gotta have 5, right? In order to have at least 5,
Uh-huh.
and more than half of them have to be 2.5 acres, the minimum acreage you could get away with would be 11 and a half. So I would say putting in 12 is a decent starting.
Yeah, that's what, that's what I was trying to get to earlier, so, yeah. Because a simple lot split is no more than 4 lots, right?
Mhm.
All right, so it would have to be a minimum of 5 lots, which comes up to, what, 11 and a half, so 12 covers that.
Okay.
So, I do need to ask for a clarification. Is this definition, the definition of a rural subdivision, or is this, this is what needs rural subdivision for all new rural subdivisions?
Right. If
Yeah.
you were to apply, if you had a tract of land and you wanted to figure out some way to subdivide it, you could fall under the definition of a rural subdivision if you met all of these requirements, and then you could apply for that.
Okay, because I'm concerned because Paul actually brought up a good point. My neighborhood doesn't meet this requirement, so where else in the ordinances does it even say what is also considered a neighborhood condition?
I think I'm not sure that you need to worry yourself too much about that, because these definitions of minor, rural, and major are really only for when you got a parent tract that you haven't subdivided, and you're looking towards our ordinance to find a procedure for which to make your subdivision happen. You've already got a subdivision, so you don't really need to fall under a definition. Technically, I mean, if you're trying to accomplish your subdivision today, it would have to be a major subdivision because it wouldn't follow definition of rural. But you're not trying to subdivide your lot; you're already a neighborhood.
Yeah, it does apply to other things, but I can bring it up when we get it, so, not for this session. I just need to clarify, because it was, I don't want to approve something that's gonna end up like hurting all of those us who already live in rural subdivisions, so.
All right.
Alright, thank you.
So really, now back to also clarification, we're not approving this subdivision on.
No, the
It's-
actual subdivision has not technically even been submitted for a sketch plan yet.
It would be
They're
revising the ordinance
Yes.
that would allow them then to submit.
and
Well, if they haven't submitted anything, and there's a lot of good recommendations here tonight, and Paul's point, let's make sure this doesn't have any unintended consequences. Why don't we, take what we've had, are we gonna vote on this tonight, or do we need to vote? There's no urgency on this, I think, put this in and make sure it doesn't affect anything else unintended.
I don't think it would, because any existing neighborhood would have vested rights, and any new neighborhood would just have to follow the new rules.
Yeah.
But there's no urgency to get it done tonight, is there?
Well, the applicants want to apply for this rural subdivision.
They can't apply for their rural subdivision until we change the ordinance.
Right. Otherwise, they'd have to apply for a major subdivision for 6 lots just fronting existing roads.
Right?
So were those the only two changes, 12 acres and platted for public dedication?
Right. So if you're able to see I'm sharing my screen. So if you're able to see this, these are basically this is the summary of the what I've gathered as the recommendations to revise the application as from when it was originally presented. And so if there's a consensus, or no, we have to take a motion to recommend approval with revisions, recommend these revisions to the application. How should I say that? How should they say that, Austin?
So you're recommending
Revising
revising
the ordinance.
recommending revision of the ordinance?
Guess
Yeah.
Are we doing 2 motions here?
I guess we're recommending revisions to the application.
This application has been submitted?
No.
The application for a
revising.
text amendment.
The application of the text? Well, I'm sorry.
Yes. The text amendment is what they're applying for, and the text amendment process has to go through the planning board and council. So
Oh, okay, so
this is the current text amendment application that was submitted by, this applicant.
Okay, so it's a motion to get them to change their application to this.
Right. So this applicant, Mark, and the land design team will follow through with their application to revise our definition of rural subdivision with the recommendations
So
by the planning board.
Okay, so the board is
that means.
do you want, are we also recommending changing the ordinance at this time?
Yes, because they're applying to change the ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I've kind of got a little lost in this discussion,
Right.
but,
We don't need to ask them to resubmit, do we?
No, they
We
would,
just need to.
right, they would either,
Recommend that the ordinance change or
that the
text
application,
amendment
right,
as noted here.
right, that you would recommend this as the text amendment for what they want to accomplish instead of what they submitted.
Text
so,
amendment as amended.
Yes,
to
to
recommend,
recommend the text, to recommend
Approval.
approval of the text
Text
amendment application as revised,
as amended.
as amended. Okay, so what's the exact motion again?
A motion to recommend approval of the text amendment as amended.
I make that motion. Does that work, Austin?
That's fine by me.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Paul, was that you?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? Let me see everybody real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. This is Kent, did you, okay, thank you,
Okay, great.
thank you.
That,
Thanks.
that didn't include any discussion of gates on that.
No,
That's
well,
that's a task
yeah,
for later.
That is a topic for a different day.
Okay.
And different,
Right. Yeah, just to review, the application recommendation as revised was just to change the,
for,
instead of removing B, change it from 25 to 12, and then adding a clause that must be, one road is platted for public dedication.
and that's for paragraph 150.015?
Yeah, it's still just the definitions section.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Are we
No,
good with that?
I'm sorry?
You guys got what you need on that? Cause I just have a comment.
I think so, right? You got what you need, Austin?
As well, Rohit.
Is that Rob?
Yes.
Okay, can I, before you ask a question, would you allow him to speak? He's the applicant.
Yeah,
He's part of the applicant
Yeah.
team, that is.
motion to let.
You don't need a motion, just consensus.
Consensus, everybody agree to let the applicant speak? All right, go ahead, Rob.
I appreciate your time. I just want to confirm that with the approval, we are allowed to move forward to the March 9th city council, or do we have to send this back in amended?
You wouldn't have to send it back to planning board as amended. They would recommend to the council the approval with these recommendation, the recommended revisions.
Okay.
So yes, you don't
I
have
just
to
want to make sure
come,
we're gonna be
right?
on the board, on the next agenda, or meeting for March 9th, I believe you said?
Yeah. Let me just make sure there aren't any, actually, let's confirm that offline. But your question is basically, you don't have to come back to the planning board with those revisions.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Good.
All
So
right,
it will still come through us though for the application for the rural subdivision,
Yes,
correct?
the subdivision will still come through. This was not the application for the subdivision at all. It was just the application for the text amendment, which they need as a precursor to their rural subdivision.
Right, so
Right.
I just wanted to bring up really quickly, and I don't know if it was Mike or Paul, but, to the applicant, I would definitely look at if a road makes sense for you guys, because having a bunch of, that intersection is just very congested, and having all those homes dump out onto that road could be an issue, so just, I don't know. It's something that the planning board will more than likely debate, so just FYI.
I appreciate that, thank you.
okay. Moving, or no more comments, anybody? Moving forward. Perform the function of the design review board to review the Marvin Village Hall project located at the corner of Newtown Road and Marvin School Road. And I assume that everybody got the email that the plans are not finished.
Yes, I did send an email maybe like, how long? Maybe 3 hours ago. Basically, we were seeing if we could get the plans in a state of completion by today. That was not possible. So at this time, I would just really like the planning board, your recommendations on any like really major changes.
This is not the design review board approval, that's just,
Another day of discussion.
yeah, without spending, an hour and a half on it. Because can you pull the plans up?
Sure.
That you mailed out?
Austin, we need to, hold on. We need to put the text amendment on.
Rohit, were you able to ever, and
work
this might be
session
that I
for call for
just
public
missed it
hearing.
Okay,
in all
just get me the
email,
stuff
but
for it.
were you ever able to clarify what our, as everyone was saying, purview
Did you,
is for
did you not
design
get-
review board? Because
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's holding us up.
Right, I can show you just the section of the ordinance that just talks about it.
yeah, he sent an email out on February 8th. Did you not get that, Kelly?
If it went to my personal account, I just haven't seen it. Austin's been
That's-
keeping me updated.
That's fine. I'll pull it up real quick. And
That's
it's fine. It's fine to rediscuss this right now. But basically, in a nutshell, the purview is to compare the plans that have been presented to the land use plan and the character of Marvin, and determine if what is presented fits in Marvin. This is in contrast to when we were creating conditional districts. At that time, you were responsible for writing the design. You would say this is what should be allowed, as opposed to the design review board, where you say, okay, what you're proposing is suitable for Marvin, and really should only be recommending changes if you find something is not is just not correct at all for Marvin. Some of the major changes that you made, I would say, were very good.
You want your email?
Yeah, I found the ordinance as well. So I'll pull it up here too. Here. Boop, boop, boop. Main thing is here, number 2, to ensure design of development respects and preserves the rural heritage of environmental resources found within the village. To warrant use of sound and creative design principles by applicants in designing proposed projects in order to produce high quality site planning, architectural design, use of high quality materials, construction methods, and techniques. So for example, when you recommended to rotate the building so that it would have better pedestrian flow, that would definitely fall under a recommendation that is in your purview under number 3 here. But for example, if you were to discuss exactly which railing you want to see, it's not really fair to say that that is in your purview. Instead, we would say that they being the applicant, would present a railing, and then if it's just definitely not number 2, if it's definitely not rural heritage, for some reason you feel that way, then you can tell them to change it to something else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but they still have to actually put on the design that there is a railing.
Right. They will show you.
The issue last time was like there wasn't any representation.
Yes, and that's why today we're not asking for any votes. They were not able to complete the renderings that show exactly what's being built by in the 2-week span that we had since the last meeting. So yes, it is definitely in your purview to at least see what is being built, and I think that would apply for the light poles in the parking lot as well. If we present that to you and you say that is that fits the theme of Marvin, then we move forward. Again, as opposed to you deciding what is built, that's not the purview. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, thank you. In answer to your first question, I mean, besides the things we just mentioned, the only other thing that I think was important was just understanding the screening around the HVAC and
Right.
the generator. Because it was very unclear as to actually where that was in terms of the rendering, so, I mean, but we pretty much said it all
Yeah,
last time.
Okay. Right, so that means if no one, and I did send a most recent plans, and I don't expect that all of you look through the most recent plans. They're just basically more complete versions of the same plans that I put in the agenda packet last week. So if you looked at the agenda packet from last week, then if you've seen anything that's absolutely ridiculous that you want to comment on, that would be the time to do that. But if not, then I would not be requesting any action at this time, and we can just move on.
you know, some of our previous things were pretty major.
Right,
The
right.
Entrance and move the generator, yeah, but, yeah.
Right. Does anyone have any other comments about that? And when I say move on, of course, it will require, you seeing the full plan set and giving your approval on everything. But it will happen at hopefully the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right, all quiet. Okay. Am I correct? No other comments from anybody? No. Moving forward. Discussion of street signs and speed limit signs.
All right. I put Christina on this, but it was introduced to the agenda by Michael Lavelle. So if you would like to introduce the topic, Michael, you can, or I can. Your choice.
I can talk about it. I mean,
Okay.
Because what happened was, we have, in our neighborhood, we have street signs and speed limit signs already. And, across the street, Derek and another guy came and put a galvanized steel 25 miles an hour speed sign in a yard that already has 3 signs. There was no communication with the HOA. There was no communication where the sign would go, what the sign would be. And I thought that was, the planning board, should have a say, or we could, recommend to council that if they are putting signs in neighborhood, they should be of the same design that the neighborhood has approved. A lot of neighborhoods have different signs. And you put a galvanized steel sign in the neighborhood where everything else is a decorative pole, it stands out and it looks awful. Plus, we already have speed limit signs in our neighborhood. So we were adding additional signs when we already have signs in the neighborhood. And I just didn't know, how it was done. Does it not have to go through planning board? I don't think we've seen anything about the signs coming into neighborhoods.
I don't know that goes, as a requirement to the planning board. I know, I sat in on the last council meeting, I guess it was, where they spent almost as much time talking about the street signs as we spent talking about Village Hall. So, and trying to get the new, Village of Marvin street signs up. And the problem is, at Heritage Oaks, it's fine. We just had a conventional DOT street sign where they just changed the placard. But then you get into Firethorn and Innisbrook and Marvin Creek and all these other communities who have your pretty street signs. And I know they spent a long time discussing how to work within those parameters. And I'm not sure what they ever came up with.
I didn't realize that you could put up a speed limit sign. I thought that was done by the state.
Well, we own those roads. So whatever you think that the state can do with state roads, we do with the roads that we own.
Okay.
So for example, in Firethorn, we took those over last year, maybe.
Same time did it,
Yeah. Sometime last year, we took over 5 neighborhoods, and then another 3 or so neighborhoods just finished being developed. And so we own all those roads. We own about 15 miles of roads, and all those roads need. The state still requires that we have a certain standard of signs so that that can be enforced by law enforcement. Now, I suppose there are somewhat decorative signs that can be still considered under the standard of enforceable, but the signs that you guys have in your neighborhood right now are not DOT standard, and so you couldn't say, okay, there's a sign up that says 25, or like I think Meadowlark has one that says 23. It's not enforceable. And that's where the crux of the issue is. The state still...
And that's fine.
Yeah.
My problem there is we already have the poles. We already have the poles up to put the sign on the pole. It wasn't I was objecting to the sign. We don't have them at 23 or 19 or anything like that. We have signs that say 25 miles an hour. So these were additional signs that, unfortunately, the HOA spends a lot of money on lampposts and on signs. And then, all of a sudden we have, a sign that doesn't fit what the rest of the neighborhood does. I just thought it was a good idea for whoever's making the decision to put the signs up to coordinate that discussion with the HOA. I mean, the poor person that, they put a sign up, like he has a fire hydrant, a street sign, two speed limit signs, and a children. He has 5 pieces of hardware in his yard, and not one person asked him if they could put a piece of hardware sign in his yard. Now I know you have an easement and everything, and just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it.
That is a really good conversation, and just as John said, the council's having the kind of exact same conversation there.
They're going to talk about it. It's either the retreat or the work session. I think the work session.
Sure.
I think it's, I'm not sure unless the council asks us to get involved. I think it's a council item.
Wouldn't this be a design review, the design to preserve the heritage of Marvin?
I would tend to agree with Michael there, where the land use plan and everything in it, is the purview of the planning board, and to create this, aesthetic that you're talking about of Marvin, which is supported in the land use plan. And if you believe that these signs, don't fit the aesthetic, then you're welcome to bring your concern to the council. That's just...
Rohit, may I say one thing? When I ordered the speed limit signs for the village, I had a long conversation with the plant manager at the sign plant for Correction Enterprises, and he cautioned me that decorative signs and posts have to be within certain standards, because the village can be liable for distracting drivers if some sort of accident were to occur due to a sign not being established in CDOT standards. So that is something we can talk about.
Right, even if it's our road. And I will also bring up one more thing. And again, I know that you said that your objection is not to the your objection is not to the having the speed limit sign is the pole. I do want to say that this is in the front. If you drive right into Firethorn Club Drive, this is right in the front, and that is not an enforceable sign. It's too small and it's yellow. It has to be white, and it has to be one of 2 sizes. It's like either 18 by 24 or 24 by 30. So like you said, the conversation. Sorry?
I understand,
right?
But we're not having officers camping out in people's driveway with a speed gun.
Right. But even if someone were speeding in your neighborhood, they wouldn't be able to be ticketed if there's no sign that is, it's lawful.
I totally understand that, and the next ticket in our neighborhood will be the first one. But, my question here is, why not work with the HOA? Why not work with the communities? We already have the poles up. We can put the signs on the poles. I'm not objecting to the legality of it.
I
I'm
think
just,
that,
our job should be to work with our neighbors, not just do it because we can.
Okay,
It's-
yeah,
We have how many neighborhoods, how many HOAs do we have in Marvin?
maybe 20,
Maybe 20?
A lot.
20, maybe 25.
Yeah, it's a
But-
lot. It's a lot of people to coordinate with.
You're not putting the signs up all in one day. How many signs, when you're going to put fire thorns up or Innisbrook or Marvin Creeks, why not, before you do it, have the conversation with them? I mean, it's not a one-day job.
Yeah,
You're gonna do this over a long period of time, are you not?
It's one
Right.
or two signs per neighborhood, and we have 10 signs to put
Yeah,
in.
so we have about, we're only doing about
I think it was
6 or 7 right now, but
I think it probably, and I'm second guess, I don't disagree with you, Michael. Probably should have, they just didn't think about it, maybe.
yeah, because the staff to council conversation was, based around, like I said, the legality of enforcement. We said we need this sign to enforce it. We bought a bunch of poles and signs, and we went out and put it. And now, you're not the only one that says this.
What's in our spec manual? Like our, like, do we
Well,
have
you wanna put
a-
up the sign, do you wanna put up the sign you did put in Firethorn, so we can see, so we can see the five posts in this guy's yard?
Yeah, one
We don't
second.
need to, but the point is, it just happened. It didn't need to just happen.
Yeah.
You could let somebody know, especially the individual who lives in that house.
Yeah. I think this really was a conversation.
I think 3's enough. 5's kind of over the limit.
Yeah, I think this, probably was a conversation really to Christina or someone, that, I'm not sure that it's that we need to get,
Christina is over transportation issues.
deep into this.
Can we not make a recommendation to council?
They're gonna discuss this at their work session. They were talking. Joe briefly mentioned at the last meeting to talk to HOAs about letting them have the option to upgrade the design of the poles, but they haven't even had that discussion yet. That was just an idea thrown around, but
Well, you're talking about. the
And that's a good point. I mean,
I'm talking about
if
the
you
speed
put
limit.
signs up in the neighborhood, you say, hey, we're coming with 2 signs, we can put the galvanized steel up, or, if you guys want your lamppost, whatever, you have to pay for it. So it doesn't cost us any more money. I mean,
I'll let Rohit speak to anything else.
All right, well,
He's
it's not
done
the end of
that.
the world, but it's something with a small community like we have with only 20 neighborhoods, that we should be able to have that discussion.
yeah,
Yeah, so the poles aren't here. Sorry, I just
Yeah,
wanted to-
they're all out, ready to be put up.
Yeah, we don't have the poles here, but I think
It's just it's a standard U-channel post.
right,
Yeah.
but I guess to
10
streamline,
feet.
yeah,
Standard 10 feet U-channel post.
yeah.
It's a metal,
It's a,
with holes
it's
in
a
it.
Christina or
And you
council
should.
conversation. Good point. I don't know that we need to make a recommendation.
I mean,
Council hasn't even discussed it yet.
right, and I guess maybe we can bring this back to a future planning board meeting. But I mean, if we're since council already knows that this is an issue, it might be just either prudent to just not make any consensus or motion, or if it is the consensus of the board to recommend that council consider this issue, they might have another another foot to stand on when they say, okay, we're gonna make either a purchase or if they make any decisions, it would be nice to have a consensus or something that the planning board thinks that the council should look into a different arrangement for the polls.
I think they just
I
should.
mean, it makes financial sense to use what is already existing, so,
Yeah.
I mean, besides the fact that it's a courtesy to an HOA, like, why would we spend money on a pole when we could just replace that 25-mile-an-hour sign with that's right there,
Yeah,
with one of the white ones, and then they still get to keep their poles, and we save money on one of those dumb aluminum ones.
Yeah, I think the dumb aluminum ones cost $3, so it's not that much.
yeah.
It's not that much.
Every $3 counts, Michael Lavelle. Every $3.
Yeah.
That's $30 of we had 10, $30. We just said go towards that railing for the handicap ramp.
Yeah, I hear you.
All
I'm
right,
with you.
I don't think we, yeah.
Well, that's fine. If you think that, if you think council is aware of this, they're gonna discuss it at the, their retreat this week, and then that's fine.
They're going to discuss it at the work session next week.
The sign still remains, and, you know, once it's up, it's hard to get removed. But, that sign still remains in the neighborhood, but, council's aware of it, like you said, we'll see where that takes. If we need to discuss it later on, I guess I can bring it up.
Okay. Moving on. Discussion of the planning staff addition. Rohit.
Yeah, so I'm really happy to say that council has agreed to hire a contract planner from Enfocus. His name is Tom Whitenauer, and he's basically just going to be an extension of everything that we need to get done in this Marvin Planning Department. He's very experienced. I think actually I have a lot to learn from him. He's got about 30 years of experience in planning, both public and private sector. He's been a planning director for Greenville, North Carolina. And now he's in Enfocus putting his time towards other municipalities. We have him for 16 hours a week. And, there's just so much more that can get done now that I have an extra hand. So I'm just, he wasn't able to come today because he's wrapping up another contract, which he did have a meeting tonight for, but once that contract is over, potentially he'll be available on a Tuesday night that he can come and you can all meet each other. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
All right. Moving on. The previous Marvin Heritage District Strategic Plan Committee meeting.
Ooh,
You want some water?
no, I'm good. I'm just, that meeting feels like it was so long ago.
It really does.
Can you fix the screen so we're no longer looking at the road hump sign?
Yep. All right. So, at the previous meeting and also at the council meeting last week, DFI gave their presentation on the feasibility study. Given the three scenarios, I think I already explained who DFI is. They're a group out of UNC that does this kind of work, developing and helping municipalities figure out what they need to do. So I'm gonna breeze by this presentation. Let's see. Come on.
Rohit, did you send that presentation to me?
Didn't you already send it?
I'm not sure that I put it in the packet, but I will send you guys this presentation as soon as I can. I don't think I put it in the packet, right?
I can just forward the email
No,
that you
it's not
sent.
in
That you
the
sent the
packet.
strategic plan committee if you want.
Ooh, not in the packet.
Do you want me to forward the email you just sent a few hours ago? The one
Yeah,
about the
that'd be
committee?
good.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I'm going to send you the email that Rohit sent the strategic plan committee. It's got, it's got the presentation in it. Just 1 second.
Okay, great. So if you get that email and want to follow along with the PowerPoint, that's great. In that email, you'll also see the
It's good.
you'll also see the feedback for commercial uses. We just Tom just started last week, and he's already helping with that. So it's really relieving for me. But anyway, so we hired DFI to consider the financial viability of development with certain density scenarios that we created at a staff level with some input from the committee and the board. Here are the scenarios. The low, medium, and high scenario would put 0.8 units per acre. 0.8 units per acre for the low, 1 per acre for medium, and 1.2 for high. And then commercial FAR is floor area ratio. So we're talking 0.15 floor area ratio. That's about 15,000 square. No, that's too much. 1 second. That's 6,500 square feet of commercial per acre, and you know, our average house size in Marvin is about 5,000 square feet. So with the low density scenario, we're talking not much more than, you know, a large house size looking building per acre. And then once you get into the 0.25, that's 43, 560, 0.25, that's 10,000, 11,000 square feet per acre of commercial. So that's, you know, that's when you start needing to get into, you know, more closer together types of buildings for that. So the high density is not that high, but it's probably, you know, pushing what's considered high density for Marvin. Anyway, getting into the presentation, they looked at this district in two nodes, East Node and West Node. They looked at the densities that we provided and then worked out how many square footage and how many units of housing would fit in each of these nodes. You have these numbers here. Take a look at that. And then on the other side, it's more geared towards residential. The map, again, the yellow areas are residential and the purple areas are commercial. Green is buffers and red is Village Hall. So the west side is much more geared towards residential, which is something that the planning board decided a while ago that they would, they would want to see not as much commercial, beyond Marvin Road. So that's why that looks like that. Okay, so the commercial feasibility they found, this is their, their basic assumptions of, costs. And so what they found, basically the development cost for each of the nodes, the square footage, how much that would cost to develop in the land. And what they found, and you'll see this for both the commercial for both the East Node and West Node, it is positive. They found 6, 7, and 8% return rate, but they are saying that the developers seek a target of 15 to 18%. And for the West, the commercial section is 5, 6, and 7, and again, they suggest that the developers are seeking a target of 15 to 18%. So while our vision of a low density downtown, which I've heard some people say that's an oxymoron, it's not in the red, at least, but there is what the outcome of this study is that there is room for maybe optimizing the design, maybe getting more creative and flexible, and maybe having some partnerships with the properties to improve that rate of return. These are their recommendations. They said increase density, decrease open space, or consider private-public partnerships for the infrastructure, where if we found an arrangement to help fund the either the cost of the land or the development of the open space, then less of the cost burden would be on the developer. The outcome, if you're walking down the street, is the same, but you'd get the more rate of return, and the developer might seem, you might actually find someone to, you'll have better luck finding someone to build our vision. So residential feasibility, let's see, this is the outlook of the residential. The whole thing is 106 acres. So 106 acres is housing 74, 99, and 119 units. But even then, let's see, what they're finding is this is the rate of return for the east and the west side. While the residential looks fine on the east side, it's really only that one sliver on Finch's property. The west side is a little bit short, and what that means, again, is we will have to come up with strategies to improve those numbers, whether that is to come up with a partnership to figure out how we fund the open space so that the developer doesn't have to, or maybe it's we try to raise revenue in some way to fund more of the infrastructure, but it's or to come up with ways to creative ways to look at density, and I put this into the email with the committee, and Austin forwarded you as well. So, but when CP&I did their workshop, they recommended senior living center. And at the time, we didn't really think about that too much, but that is, in a way, a mechanism to allow quote unquote higher density without the negative impacts that you traditionally associate with density.
Paul?
Rohit,
Yeah.
I guess, my reaction as I'm seeing this is sort of a, gee, I'm not really sure. It almost sounds like we're saying this isn't going to work, sort of. I know that's a jump to a conclusion, but I guess as a person who lives here in the town, my reaction is, well, why would I want to bend over backwards to create commercial development when we're really not that fond of it in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions that I have here, and I would hope that these people can help us with it, is to sort of show some sort of economic implications of us going down this path. Like, oh, if you just let this develop into single-family homes, here's what it'll cost you because you'll have to build schools, or you'll need this, or you'll need infrastructure. Whereas if you go this route, it'll generate X dollars in property taxes, it'll generate sales taxes that you'll get, and so on. There's got to be some economic connection here to benefit the town, the village. Otherwise, I don't see any reason why we would try to make it more profitable for the developer when this is something that we're sort of not all that excited about in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And at this point, I would say the DFI is looking to say, if you wanted to make it work, here are some suggestions. And so in 2 or 3 months from now, if we look at all sorts of suggestions and, you know, after hearing a lot of feedback, the council says, no, we also agree, maybe we don't want to bend backwards like that for the developer, then, as I've been saying from the beginning, if you have to sacrifice too much of value, then they might just not want to do the district. But it's not that these developments are not profitable. It's just that DFI suggests that there is room for a little bit of improvement to get to a point where developers would look into it. And even with this residential rate of return here, there's some 50 acres or so out there, maybe even more, that would have been developed residentially by now, but they just haven't. They've left it as, just forest. So, and if you look at, I haven't actually gotten to the public investment side of this.
I was trying to make sure that it was in what you just sent out, because I listened into the presentation,
Mm-hmm.
and there was estimated public investment,
Right.
Water, sewer line, et cetera, and and to pay for it, it's in what you've got, and you haven't had a chance to look at it. There is, this is how much tax revenue you can get from it.
Right. So, so the benefit, I guess, like if you're saying that, not everyone is all, really for it, the major benefit of the district to the whole village is that social benefit of having a gathering space. But the economic benefit, the economics really kind of balance out here. But if you just look at the district overall, the district just in itself, the west, this is the public investment section, and I have to kind of back up and explain the section before I start breaking it down for you. So they did also look at the public investment, and they said, if we were to put 1,000 linear feet, $1,000 per linear foot is actually quite high, and they're including, even sewer and road paving in that. But water main extensions and all sorts of the streetscape improvements that we would, put in from the public side, largely raised from a special taxing district. So the idea here is that we would apply a 25-cent special a 25-cent tax on top of the 6-cent tax for these properties alone, and that would raise the money that would be needed for the improvements. Of course, in my opinion, I think they overestimated the east side infrastructure improvements. But in any case, let's say that they didn't. You have the west side showing that the money raised from them would be very, very profitable. And if you were to say that, maybe we need to allow ways to make that those properties more profitable, that in turn raises more taxes for this district and allows it to be, the best that it can be. Whereas the east side is still in the red, but they balance out in a way that if you also incorporate the fact that we got $1 million grant for the streetscape of this district, that more than balances out. Like, say if we were to do the medium scenario for both, for example, you have 1.3, 1.4 in the black for the west side, and 1.9 in the red for the west side. So you're short 600, but if you add in the $1 million that we got, we're actually positive 400K. So the more profitable these developments can be, the better that this district can be overall from the public investment standpoint. And I think that's the answer I was trying to get to, but I had to explain this whole entire section first. That's maybe not quite the answer that you wanted to hear, because I think the root of
How
it.
does this compare to the alternative? What if we didn't do this? What if we just let this land develop under, Marvin's residential standards? What do these numbers look like, right? We still have to build roads and sewers and so on, right? Or that's the question I'm kind of trying to understand.
Well, and Paul, I think one of the things that Rohit, if you could cover, that we talked about in the Heritage District meeting was that specifically for the residential development part, that actually what we have right now, they deem to be the most valuable, meaning the high-end single-family homes.
Right.
That was a better return for the investors than putting in higher density 50, whatever neighborhoods that we had talked about, right? So when it balanced out, they did a better job with those high-end ones than those lower. Lower costs.
Thanks for reminding me. So in the first round, when this hadn't even hit any of the boards yet, all of these numbers down here were red because they had used townhomes at the time, and townhomes would sell for less each, but we were artificially restricting the number of units. So if we say you're only allowing 45 units on 45 acres, but you have to squeeze them together as townhomes and provide a whole bunch of open space, then each unit is selling for less, and you're still selling less units. I mean, the traditional benefit of townhomes is that you can fit more of them on a given tract, right? But if we're artificially...
So let me understand. So,
yeah.
Melinda, what you're basically saying is that with the restrictions we're trying to impose on the Heritage District, we're actually making the land less valuable?
No.
What I was saying, and that what we learned, because I had to go through it a couple times a couple weeks ago when we did this, was that actually the restrictions that we have for single family homes, right? We don't do multiple family dwellings currently. Those single family homes, the higher end that are currently being built, right, in any of our neighborhoods with the setups, with the R40 or whatever, that those actually prove to be the most valuable, and we're going to give the best rate of return for developers, as opposed to us thinking about a higher density setup, right? So we had talked, I think it just kept coming up, like this idea of putting in patio homes or townhomes or something like that. And what this showed, and I remember it because it made me very happy, is that really these high-end single-family homes are the best rate of return for the developers, which then led me to think like, well, that's not changing then anything on our end, right? So then they would come in just like any other developer and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. So from my understanding, that actually led us to not need to do on the residential side not to do anything unless we wanted to put it as part of this to increase the tax revenue. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Somewhat, I guess I'm wondering though, don't these single-family homes get impacted by, being next door to a ice cream shop?
well, if you were to buy a
This
single,
was specifically on the west side,
Mhm.
right? So those really big plots, that was the one, over there, I'm pointing to my screen like you can see it, Paul, but yes, over on the west side, those big residential plots, because that little tract of land number 11 that's over on the east side, that one was one of the smaller ones that obviously then would have to have some concession, right? But the big ones, honestly, it's that R40, the way we've got it set up now, we talk about preserving Marvin, and what I learned and took away from this, and Rohit, correct me if I'm wrong, was that residentially, we don't actually want to change anything.
yeah, so what we did in the first round of DFI is that when we allowed the same number of units per acre, but a lot closer together, so like townhomes and then providing a lot more open space, that was not feasible at all. That was in the red entirely. But the purpose of this chart is basically to say that if you build more expensive homes, then you have a higher rate of return. The PSF is the price per square foot. It's the higher that you sell each home, the more return you have. And each home can sell for higher if they're bigger, if they're single family. So we are here allowing a certain number of units, but each of those units is a more valuable home that creates more of a return for the developer. That's what you're trying to get at, what I said before. So we don't really have to sacrifice a lot of the values of Marvin to make these numbers work more. We just have to figure out like a financial arrangement where potentially we're using this tax revenue to fund more of the infrastructure. Like, for example, if we rearranged the numbers from these two slides here in a way that helped fund more of the infrastructure, then each individual property owner could see these numbers be higher. And then we wouldn't have to change too much of the scope of this district. That's why this recommendation slide, some of them might not be even thought of. Like DFI works all over the state, and they're telling us that we need to increase the density. That is largely, not going to be considered. I can anticipate. It's the other solutions that might be considered, and if we want that open space, we might have to use this tax revenue to buy it. Maybe we get another grant to buy it, but the idea that we have to try it. Basically, we're at a stage where several months ago I had anticipated that the council might make a go or no go decision on this district, but we're not going to do that because we want to see if we can set out maybe another couple of months to see if maybe we hire DFI again to do another deeper level analysis of how to incorporate some of these strategies, and we talk to the property owners and see what their appetite is for some solutions, and get every mind working on what can be done without sacrificing much of what you'd want to see in Marvin or not want to see in Marvin.
Rohit, is I think what's it called, MSD, the special tax?
Yes.
Is that the only way to squeeze, juice out of this lemon, or is there?
No, it's
some
not.
other tool to get revenue to the town?
No, it's not. In fact, there's another another revenue tool called a TIF, a tax increment financing, where you borrow from the whole village's increase in property values because you build something that increases everyone's property value. That's kind of a play that if we build this district, everyone's homes will be a little more valuable, and so the taxes that we would collect would be a little bit more. We can actually borrow from that estimation.
Borrowing from the equity.
Right.
Like the future equity. Okay.
Right.
Wow, that's That's creative thinking. Who came up with that?
It's a fairly common tool. I mean, it's more evident that that is a viable tool when you're looking at a blighted downtown, for example. You use tax increment financing because all the properties around it are, very low value because they're right next to a blighted downtown. But then you say, okay, all these properties are going to increase, twofold, threefold because we're restoring this place.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'm struggling, frankly, to see how my house would go up in value because there's a downtown
Right.
area.
The margin of that increase would not be as much for Marvin, and so we really haven't been talking about the TIF. But that is just another tool that I know of because you're saying, is this the only tool? I mean, of course, if we can squeeze $100,000 out of a TIF for a 20-year projection, that's $100,000 that we didn't have before. So it's not. It is a tool, and of course, again, we can also apply for grants. We did get $1 million in grants from, the regional organization that would say, hey, we'll help build your trail network. Here's $1 million to do it. There are a lot of different ways to get grants, and we can consider that as revenue because it's money that, didn't come from the Village of Marvin's general fund.
But at this point, that's still us hustling. You know what I mean? Like, that's still us doing all the work. So the developers are basically just getting the benefit and they're not giving anything, right? Like,
in the end, a conversation that could happen is, hey, is a developer willing to see less than the target? There might be room for compromise. 15 to 18% is like you're drawing. Any developer would develop for a profit margin of 15%, but maybe a local developer that really just wants to see something appropriate for Marvin would be willing to settle with 10% because they want to see this happen and they're willing to sit out for a longer term to see their desired returns. So there is that one opportunity to say, okay, we're not just going to say, DFI said 12 to 15%, that's what we have to shoot for. We might be able to talk to property owners and see if the developers are willing to see something a little bit less. We have to have that conversation.
Rohit, whether you consider this to be a high risk development or a low risk, because the target profit can be how willing you are to take a lower target profit is how risky the project is. So is this a high risk, low risk, medium risk? Do you know?
Oh, I really don't have a thumb on that to say. I think though that
no, this is high risk. This is very high risk.
Mm-hmm.
I think getting somebody to do 15% is a wish. This is very high risk. The assemblance of property. How many acres did you say this was?
The coloration area of this map is a total of 106 acres.
And the Village of Marvin owns 3.
Yeah,
I mean,
4 roughly. Yes.
There's discussion with them. I mean, isn't meetings still going on with all the other landowners? I mean, that's really, they're the ones that are going to benefit from this. I mean, we should participate in this as a landowner that we are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I agree. We're doing everything here and reaping no benefits. And trying to find a developer to try to assemble these parcels together, good luck with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the discussion has to be with the landowners and say, hey, listen, if we're serious about this, we need to group together. We need to hire a planner, a land acquisition, somebody that holds our hand all the way through this. I mean, this is a major, major project with very high risk. And what we're seeing here dictates that. The $20 rent, I don't think, is correct. I don't think the construction cost at $150 a foot. All these numbers are guesses. I mean, trying to build today's economy is very, very difficult, and it's only going to get worse.
Michael, wouldn't it behoove the landowners to do what you just described as opposed?
That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly right. And we are a landowner too. We group together with the landowner. They're the ones that
We're
are
certainly not the quote majority here, right? I mean,
No,
it seems to me
we're
to be a
not.
minority partner.
Yeah.
Sit back and let the with the most to gain, do most of the work.
Absolutely. I think that that's exactly the way that has to do. I mean, they have to group together. If they want this to happen, they can turn this down tomorrow and say, I'm not really willing to sell. We're going through all of these scenarios and all of these projects. And do we know how many of the people want to sell? You know, what they want on their land? I mean, we're so far ahead of our skis here.
I see where you're going with that.
I mean, that's what council, I think, should do, is council should get together with all the other landowners and say, hey, listen, you guys really want this, group together, hire a company like Shook Kelly, who's been talking to them before. He'll hold your hand, he'll give you conceptual designs, he'll tell you exactly how much land you need, where you need to put it, what kind of retail you're gonna get, what kind of rent you're gonna get, what kind of construction costs, on and on and on and on. And then you look at that whole project and you say, well, yeah, we can do this, or, you know, this is so far out of our league here. Because these recommendations are, you know, there's no conceptual plans, there's no amount of square footage, there's no amount of homes. I mean, I just don't see anything here. This is not what I was expecting.
Yeah, I would also say that the developers, I mean, I don't know if anybody's going to give us a hometown discount when, you know, it is as hot as it is right now. Why would anybody outside of, you know, somebody living in the barn do this, you know, spend any time on this when they can go make 5% more somewhere else? So it really be good.
Fair enough. I really like the idea that you were suggesting that the property owners should be the ones to hire someone that says for them, like, this is what, you know, the minimum of what we could construct to be profitable, and then we come back and look at it and say, yes or no.
Bingo. There you go. That's exactly right. They come back with a conceptual design and say, hey, this is what we think. This is going to be the most magnificent downtown in the United States. And we look at it and say, yeah, it is. This is great. How can we help you? Now we're saying, here's what we're doing, and you have to meet these.
Don't we know, though, at this point, is that whatever somebody's gonna come back with is gonna be to the right of the high on those lists that we were just looking at? And don't we also know that the town, let's just say to get to high would be a bit of a stretch for most folks in terms of density and things like that. So, you know, to me, there's gotta be something else in it here for us. To me, it can't just be, hey, but don't you want a restaurant downtown?
Right.
I mean, no, I mean, yes, I'd love one, but no, I don't want to pay to get one. I already have one at Blakely and so on. So what's in it for us in terms of additional revenue, you know, improvement in the quality of life, property values going up, et cetera? Those are the things I think we need to know a whole lot more about before we even consider going to the right of the right column on high.
And I think that's the job of the landowners, Paul. I think they're the ones that have to group together and show us, hey, look at this. Isn't this going to be nice? Don't you guys want this in your downtown? Won't this be great for home values, for community pride, and everything like that? I mean, that's their job, in my opinion.
Well, and I also like to understand what's the alternative outcome, right? Let's just say we stick with our existing rules for that zone area. What ends up happening, and how does that help us or harm us in the long run? Like, what does that cost us to build those roads and to maintain that infrastructure and so on?
Yeah, so I think what you're asking, so the medium scenario is based on 1 unit per acre and a 0.2 floor area ratio, which you would consider our, you know, current standards for both residential and commercial density. So what that would, if we were to stick with that and say, okay guys, this is what we're doing, maybe we fudge some things to make it work a little better, but this is what we're doing, there would have to be a bit more of the public investment piece. Maybe we would have to have a higher MSD tax. Maybe we would have to stretch to find other sources of funding. But that's what DFI is coming out and saying, that the medium scenario is giving you your 6 and 7% rate of return on the commercial. And for here, let's say for example they build even bigger houses, and even maybe they build really big single family houses closer together but the same number, and that percentage becomes 5 or 6%. We would still have to find ways to fund more of the infrastructure, so that raw percent is higher without us making any changes to the design of the district. So that's what I'm saying. That's what it would cost us.
Rohit, on these numbers, let me ask you. You're showing the development cost 206, 194, 187.
Mm-hmm.
What was the cost of the initial proposal for Village Hall, which isn't as nice as a house? It was well over $200 a foot.
Let me work that out.
Now, I think, well, you talking about the total cost,
Yeah.
including the site development? Yeah.
Right, we saved a lot of money on the site development by doing it differently this time. I mean, we will find out when we get the bids. We took the building.
But the last set of bids that we had, we bumped around one here.
Right. We were looking at roughly 300. Right, we were looking at roughly $300 square foot.
There you go.
Yeah.
That was including 2 detention ponds and et cetera, and a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's another thing. We had 2 detention ponds. We had 30 something parking spaces when we only needed 24. And we pushed the building way into the stream buffer for no real reason. This time we pulled it as far from the stream as possible, so we don't need to build a bunch of retention walls. We don't need to have really steep grading and environmental protection as much. So if you take,
I think the raw building cost was in the
it was only about 100.
$130 a foot.
Yeah, let me just do the building cost alone, and we'll see how that works out. Right.
To that point though, like any of these properties, you're gonna end up with kind of these unforeseen additional costs. And I'll tell you, Gordon Charay, who was the first mayor of Marvin, like I said, I grew up around here, and I can remember a story that big piece of property, there is allegedly a bulldozer that is stuck in the dirt because it's so marshy. So somewhere between Kelly and I's house, there's a bulldozer stuck back in the woods. I mean, it could be lore, but Gordon Charay told me that story when I was growing up, that there was a bulldozer stuck. So that's one of the examples of like not knowing what you're getting into. And to Michael's point of kind of this being hyperbole, for a lack of a better phrase, like it's, I think that part's pretty concerning, and I hadn't thought about this as it being a hypothetical. I guess I assumed that somewhere some of these conversations had already been had, right? Especially with those couple of really big pieces of property, because, you know, I know that the Letts may not have like formally listed, but the Priebus family and, I always forget the other big landowner across the street, but like, yes, but that some of these conversations were bound to have happened before. So we're actually, I guess the other thing is like, what if they don't ask for all of these concessions and we offer them up front and then they want more? Wouldn't it be behoove the council and the village to kind of go in low? Or is that like my used car salesperson coming out?
Yeah, I think this presentation shows that we're already quote unquote going in low. Those landowners, the Priebuses and the Odells, have seen this presentation and have talked with them, and they do realize that, you know, if we choose the lowest feasible scenario, 3% is still not what they're looking for, and that's why, you know, we have to come to a point where we're thinking, how much do we change the design and how much do we just change the financing? where, you know, in one way we can move the numbers around to fund more infrastructure, but then also, you know, maybe we, like CP and I said, maybe we do allow that one senior living center. It would be like 100 units on 10 acres, but it would be the money maker for them. It would be tucked in a way that you wouldn't even know it, and it would provide that that return that they need without, you know, for the rest of the property to be something like 30 homes on, you know, the rest of the 30 acres and a big park or something like that.
So is that what they want, Rohit? Do they want 100?
The senior living center is just like, we're brainstorming here. That's not something that they said that they want. It's just brainstorming.
So then to Michael's point, does it make, and to Paul's point, I think too, does it make more sense then to make them come to us with that?
Yes, I definitely, I think that's a great idea. Like, I wrote down as a note, you know, to consider that the property owner should hire someone. They design the downtown, their property in the downtown. They come up with those ideas of what they think would be feasible. We've come up with what we wanted from the resident survey, and we put those in a scenario, and they will come back to us and say, this is what we think is feasible, and we might be able to meet somewhere in the middle.
So what's the next step?
The next step here is to have those conversations with the landowners. DFI does the whole spectrum of services that you know, we were talking before, you know, someone needs to lead our hand through the whole process kind of thing. DFI would offer, again, to have that kind of month-long session of talking with the property owners and kind of compiling what they would want to see from their standpoint to make this happen. So that is the next step. Right now, we need to talk with the property owners and see what they're willing to see.
Is there a schedule for that? Is there a meeting scheduled to talk to the property owners? Have there been discussions?
There have been, you know, preliminary discussions where, you know, some of the property owners called up on the phone and said, hey, I saw the presentation, here's what I like and here's what I don't like and here's what we can do. But we need to do that more formally and with all the property owners. The timeline for that right now is just, you know, the next month or two, but I really also have to bring this to council because, you know, this report was only finished a week ago, and all I've done is shown the council the report. We haven't really talked about it yet, but we will be talking about, you know, this report, the implications, and the next steps at the retreat this Friday.
I mean, do you guys actually have experience in executing projects like this, or just doing the theoretical analysis?
DFI has experience, like I said, with the full spectrum of, they will guide a municipality from conception to completion and beyond. We just hired them for this study because that's how much we, you know, that's how much the scope that we were looking for at this time.
Okay. So they work with developers before landowners and
Yes. They've done all of that, and if I can come back to the map of, okay, so this is, I mean, here's the full spectrum of things that they do. Examine conditions, market analysis, site analysis, public interest, and financial analysis. That's what they said that they do. And let's see.
Are they a part of the university?
Yes, they're based out of UNC School of Government. So that's kind of the top of the top there. They have that reputation, and these are all the places that they've done projects. And they've only formed in 2011. So that just kind of goes to show you how much experience that they have.
Michael, how do you think these guys are different from the firm you mentioned?
Much different.
In what way?
I think this is a government-run facility, which they're doing a good job, but I think that, you know, again, the presentation is out there for everybody to see. Chuck Kelly, Paul, I think you were part of it, if Paul's still with us. You know, and they met with all of the landowners and proposed, this is what we're going to do. They have public meetings, they have charrettes, they have, you know, they go from the beginning stages to the end, and they do conceptual designs, they show everything. It's just a much better presentation. They have a history of around Charlotte. They have an office here in Charlotte and LA. if I can dig it up, or, I'll send it to everybody else. I don't know if we're not, I'll send it to Rohit and ask them to forward it to the rest of the planning board. But the meeting was a public meeting, so, you know, I know we have notes from it, and, you know, I think if we can find that, that's something we could look at again. And so, I mean, that's the way I think it has to be done. And, you know, listening to their meeting and seeing what they've done. Paul, were you part of that, you were part of the Shook Kelly meeting the first time, weren't you not?
I was, it was high level and it was conceptual.
Yeah,
It didn't have any of our specific facts and didn't, I don't think, try to, you know, show us what could be done in Marvin. It was more of a, here's what other places have done. And there were some impressive developments. So yeah, I think they're a really quality group of folks.
Well, I guess my bigger point was that they were more of a commercial operation as opposed to a government-run and funded operation like this.
Yeah, they're highly skilled. I'm not sure that these guys, I'm sure these guys are highly skilled too. I have a lot of respect for, you know, what they're doing, but this is their sweet spot. This is what they've
Michael,
done.
at this point, I think we're all perhaps saying the same thing, and that is, isn't it up to the landowners to go approach a Shook Kelly and say,
Yeah.
okay, let's partner here, let's put something in front of the town that they're really gonna like, and we'll explain to them why it's in their best interest to go forward. Everything we've done so far with the presentations we had, and with the town surveys and so on, was kind of laying out parameters so that the Shook Kellys of the world and the landowners would have an understanding of how far to the right of that column, that right-hand column, we might be willing to go. Right? To me, those three columns are more or less telling somebody, look guys, here's about where Marvin's thinks we want to be. Now, I think what we understand is no developer would be interested. And then maybe the landowners would say, well, the heck with it. So maybe there's something to the right of the high column that we could all get comfortable with, but there's got to be a reason why we get comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
And just having it doesn't seem to me to be a good reason.
Well, Nick, can you go back to that commercial overview with the three columns, please?
And, you know, I think what we, you know, all of the exercises that we've gone through, you know, from the residents, you know, surveys and the, you know, all the work that we've done on the land use plan and everything else, and this and everything else, you know, we've got to, you know, if Shook Kelly came in cold 6 years ago and, you know, came in with a presentation and the council would say, well, that looks pretty, but we really don't have any idea of what we think that we want. So we had, you know, I don't know that we've spun our wheels, you know, but we had to come up with some idea of what we think we need or would like to see to give Shook Kelly or whoever it may be in the future, you know, some guideline. This is what we think we're comfortable with, so don't come in with South Park.
Well, I would also say that, you know, I used the example in the last meeting, and that is if you show me 6 different handicap rails, I can bet you I'm going to pick the most expensive one to say, yeah, I like that one. So what I think we've done with our surveys so far is we've sort of given a lot of people an opportunity to say, hey, which handrail do you like? And of course they pick the nicest ones. And now the question would be, well, okay, well, we can't have that handrail, we can have this handrail, but in exchange we're getting X. Then maybe people will be interested.
Mm-hmm. And right now, what I think what you're concerned, the only thing is that you're hearing is that we make a sacrifice for a lesser handrail for the only reason that the developers find it more feasible to build, right? That's your
Well, or that we get a
concern.
handrail, but I don't really need a handrail, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not asking for a handrail.
Mm-hmm.
What we know is that this property could ultimately develop into 197 beautiful homes, and the question is, Why isn't that okay? Well, because we talked about a village center, a historic village center. Okay, but what's the benefit of that historic village center versus just having 197 beautiful homes?
And I think that's what the firm does. I think they take a look at the land that is available, the land that, you know, the owners want to develop and those that don't. And then they take that and they say, you know what, the best use for this is X. If you really want to, you know, the landowners, if you really want to maximize what you want to do here, here's what we suggest. And I think, you know, to your point, John, before, you know, we're giving them guidelines. Well, we don't really know how the land lays out and where the parking is and if you can get parking and how many detention ponds, are we going to run sewer, are we going to widen the road, are we going to have sidewalk? We have no idea. But a firm like that can take the land and say, here's the best use of the land and here's how we see it working for the best use if you want a village hall or if you want a downtown district with retail and shopping and everything. Here's what's going to have to be done. Or they can come back and say, you know, you just don't have enough. It's just not going to work. Your best point to do with this is develop residential or, you know, do something along those lines. So that's where I'm trying to get at. We have all this land. We know who's going to sell it. We know who owns it. And then we take that and then they say, here's the best use for it. Here's what we think it could look like and how nice it could be, or it just doesn't work. Because all this other stuff, I think we're just not getting to the bottom line. And at some point, we got to get to the bottom line. Is this something that's going to work, or are we just all wasting our time?
Yeah, I think that too, and I think we're kind of all in agreement that one of the things that we have to tell the council, you know, to consider is that instead of, you know, us making all of the steps forward, we have to see if the property owners are willing to take some of the steps from their end, like, you know, ask them to come to us and say, what would you see as the, you know, minimum feasible project, or come with several options, have them do the work, and then we meet somewhere in the middle if possible.
We can only do so much.
Right,
and
right.
They need to step up and they need to show. So I think we've done all that we can at this point.
Yeah,
I really do.
Our purpose is not to design the thing.
Yeah.
But we needed to come up with the guidelines.
Right,
Of
right.
what we think, you know, before they can never come back and say, how about this?
Right, right. And as it was said, you know, we thought.
But to that point, John,
Right.
if I may, to that point, John, we might not know what guidelines we really want. We're deciding guidelines from what? If we see something that we might not have even have thought of what the guidelines should be.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to develop guidelines based on what?
I mean,
and that's my problem, is saying that, you know, we're developing guidelines first and then telling them to meet those guidelines. Why not take a look at the guidelines that are presented and say, hey, this looks really great, or no, that's not for us.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I'll kind of answer that question. When we first picked these scenarios, we based off the, you know, the resident survey, the land use plan. We asked a lot of different questions in the resident survey, like how much density are you willing to see, and how big of commercial would you willing to see. And then I also put out a survey to the committee. I give them a big range of options for basically 10 or 15 different design factors, and based on the responses, the aggregate of that committee, we decided against 3 scenarios to give to the DFI group. Now, is like how accurate is that to what we as a village want? I mean, it's a lot more accurate than if, say, I were to just come up with scenarios on my own. But now the next step is to see, you know, how, you know, what are the property owners going to present? If we tell them do something that you think show us something that you think would be nice and why, then maybe we'd be willing to see something like 2 or 3 units per acre, tucked away, and age restricted or something like that. I don't know what, like, you know, Mayor Polino always says, you know, you don't know what you don't know, and I think we are kind of coming to a point where we can decide that the property owners need to put more legwork. to come to.
Rohit, I am thrilled to hear that because, you've been asking the Heritage District to bring you pictures or to send things that we like and that sort of thing. And I keep looking at stuff and thinking, yeah, but that's not Marvin, or yeah, I don't know if that would fit here, or, but yada yada, because that is not even remotely what I know how to do. Mm-hmm. Right? So I think they're spot on. And if you need a motion to take this, at our official point is that we need the council, or we need somebody to tell the landowners that they need to take the next step. I'd be happy to say that.
I don't think
we don't need a motion.
We don't need this.
One is that you can get a consensus, but also we have our council liaison that can simply just take that sentiment to the council at the retreat, if you want to ask.
I think it's what does the council want to do? From this point forward, I think we've gone as far as we can go at this
for now. Yeah.
For now. And it's up to the council to decide where they want to go with the concept of this heritage district.
Melinda, I will say, and I think there are members of the board here who can remember this, is very early on, and I do think it was a couple of board members ago, we sent pictures around. We sent like 5 pictures from various communities around the country. And we said, would this fit? What about this one? What about that one? So I don't know if you've got that in any of your emails or any records, but I found that a useful tool because I was able to look at what other cities and towns have done. And, I can tell what's going to fit in Marvin and what won't, generally.
Can I just make a comment? I absolutely agree with you guys. There was a parcel that I've actually seen 3 or 4 different plans for, and they never make up their mind. It's just like, just pick something. But this kind of, to me, sounds like, so I do a lot of human-centered design in nonprofit, and there's no point in planning something if it's not going to benefit the community and the community doesn't want it, right? You're not going to force something on it. So while they could go away and it might be resident, oh my gosh, I can't talk, I'm tired. Resident to spend money with someone who's going to then tell them what is feasible, what it could look like. I don't know, that's up to them, but the bottom line is, does it benefit the village of Marvin, the people of, not just the taxes, but the actual people, does it make our lives better? Does it, let's not just do commercial to do commercial. I don't want a bunch of offices around, so we've given them enough that they should be able to move forward with something, but I don't want us to just say yes because we want tax revenue. What is the tax revenue going to be? How's the tax revenue then going to benefit Marvin? Is it just going to go into roads? Is it going to be built to park? But we shouldn't be bending over anymore. And it's kind of like Rohit, I can't remember the type of design that you introduced us to.
The form-based code, you mean?
Yes. So who cares about what it looks like on the outside right now? The design doesn't matter. What is going to go there? What makes sense? What are we actually going to enjoy using on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? The decoration can come after. So I do agree that they need someone coordinate them, kind of like what Mike was saying. We can put the window dressing on it later. That's almost like the last thing. Who gives a crap what it looks like at this stage? Right now, it's about what could go there, what would benefit us, and what makes financial sense for the landowners. And if it doesn't make financial sense, can we just move on and just develop it as residential? I'm just so tired of talking about it, beating a dead horse. So anyway, that's 2 cents.
That's great.
All right.
Thank you.
I think we beat it.
Yeah.
I don't think we need a consensus or a vote or recommendation. This was just a recap of
Right. This is good conversation enough. And so I guess if there's, if we can move on to just me explaining that commercial uses part, I mean, is there any other, conversation to be had about the DFI presentation?
We're going, got to go public feedback? What-
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I will describe this in 5 minutes or less, which is that after the committee agreed upon a list of commercial uses and then the planning board commented on those uses, the council actually wanted to put that out to the public. So in a period of a few weeks, I received 50 responses from people who commented on the list, and they said some of them picked one or two or their favorite uses. Some of them picked all of the uses that they would like to see. Some of them said, "I like all of the uses, thank you." And then of course a good bunch of people said, "I don't want any development at all." Some of the people were not in Marvin. Providence down south got a lot of comments. I just included all of the people who commented in the numbers. And finally, I just would like to say that Austin did just send you out the synthesis of that, all that resident feedback. Every single comment is included in that memo, anonymized, of course, so that nobody's angry at any specific person for what they think. And you can look at what the people had to say about the different commercial uses that were proposed. Take some time to read that, and
Well, I don't think we need conversation now. This is just.
no, that was just an update. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of people were passionate.
Pause a minute.
Oh, that's great.
Hmm.
Very cute. Cool.
All right.
Okay. Great.
Moving on. Very timely. Discussion of agenda time limit guides. After several of our meetings where we've gotten into deep conversations, Rohit and I have had conversations and several others, and then trying to figure out how we can move these things along in a reasonable manner. And I think a lot of our conversations are very good. I'm not trying to expect a rubber stamp, vote on that, we're done, go on. Because I think, it's a great thing about this group. But, as I mentioned earlier, asking Rohit to give us a little bit more information before we go into conditional use permits or whatever it may be, may speed us along so that we like our last conversations about the village hall, we got a little off track maybe. So I think we're going to start doing that. But the other thing, I'm not sure how many of you have reviewed council agendas. And they have put, and they're not hard and fast, they're just sort of yardsticks, but they have put, designated time, markers.
I'll pull up an agenda.
To get some idea how long, ahead of time we think it may take to cover all these items. Just once again as a yardstick. And I thought we were just going to do it, but I was told we need to perhaps amend our.
You don't need to amend your rules of procedure if that's not necessary. You just need to, if the board's interested in doing it, you guys can just tell me.
Okay.
Yeah, like a consensus. To do
Consensus is fine.
Anyway, pull up, if you can pull
Yes.
up, you can just see what I was talking about.
I will pull up, give me 1 second, I'm gonna pull up a agenda.
A typical agenda.
Regular meeting will be fine there.
Am I doing this wrong? No,
There.
here it is. I have to
Okay.
share it. 1 second. Okay.
You can see where they, allocated some time limits for different things, for the, call to order and adoption and all that stuff. 5 minutes.
Those are rough guess that I put in before the agenda goes out.
Just get, a yardstick for us to know how we're doing as we're going along.
So the the reason why we need to bring this up again to the board is that if there's a consensus, we would like to add something like this to the agenda. Since there's all the agenda items are always under items of discussion, we might need to break it down.
We would just put them one by one, like in parentheses next to the item.
Yes.
And
Would you be interested in seeing something like time?
It's not a limit. It's a guide.
Yeah. I shouldn't say limit.
It's not a limit or anything else.
Yeah, I shouldn't.
It's just a yardstick that, we can, because we've had many meetings where all of a sudden we said, boy, it's 10 o'clock or 10:30 and we're, 3/4 of the way through the agenda. So to get some idea of how we're doing.
I think it's a good idea. I don't see how that hurts. I think it's something we should do, and get our focus on the issue at hand there, and use our time wisely. I like it.
Yeah, like I said, and once again, it's going to be a learning process for us, but at least we can try to see how we're doing. So maybe next month we'll put some times in there and see how we do.
Yeah, we can have it in there.
All right,
Show of hands, I suppose.
everybody okay with that?
I'm fine with that as long as, we get clarification and information up front. I think that tends to be where a lot of our long conversations end up happening,
Yeah.
is because
Yeah.
it's just not clear what we're supposed to be doing, so clarity is king.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I know that I can do a lot better at that.
And also, like I said, even things that we've become somewhat familiar with, like the pool CUPs.
Yeah.
If we got the ordinance says this many feet and he's providing this many feet, or the ordinance says this kind of plant and he's providing that plant, or just a brief summary so we don't have to ask that many questions.
Yeah, I would also suggest that just, again, share the time limits for the time recommendations in advance as well, because somebody from the board might look at something and say, wait a second, this is gonna take a lot more than 30 minutes, and then you can have that discussion before the meeting.
Yeah. And like I said, they're not hard and fast, but until we start trying to look at where we're spending, it's more as a go back and, because you got times on the minutes, so we can compare. We thought it was gonna take us 15 minutes and we spent 30 minutes on it.
Well, the timestamps show
Yeah,
all
the
that
timestamps and stuff.
Mhm.
So, like I said, it's just a start, hopefully. I'm not a dictator. Anybody else who's got any suggestions to help us? You're blocking yourself out now, Paul. Anyway, anybody who's got any suggestions on how we
Put it as a separate column.
can do a better job?
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm all for it. All right, we'll see what happens.
I think we should still sit in and provide history, reports, because we'll be lacking that soon. History,
Yeah, like I said, he's got to get permission, and I don't know that we've given him permission yet.
You don't accept his resignation letter.
Yeah, we don't accept his resignation.
He hasn't resigned. He's
Yeah, that was
Hey, Paul,
Let's
what
keep it
happens if
on
the council reappoints you, whether you want it or not?
I moved out of town.
Oh man.
Okay, the item that we added would be item 9, Planning Board 2021 Goals and Priorities. Has anyone thought about these?
this would be good for the joint meeting that
Yeah.
we're going to be scheduling soon. By the way, if you haven't done the doodle poll yet, please do it, because the day that I have the most yeses on is the one I'm going to go with. So if you don't vote,
Yeah.
it's on you.
That's the joint meeting between us and the council
Mhm.
For
for
your
the year.
your priorities.
And
Yeah.
if you remember last year, we carried that, this is what we think that our priorities should be this coming year.
Well, last year we had basically one priority, and that was the land use plan, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think the priorities come to us, don't they?
Well, last year you had about 10 priorities, and at last meeting's agenda item, I gave you that memo with your priorities that either you listed at the meeting that you talked about it, or you brought to council, and the progress that was made on those priorities. Now, I didn't have it in this agenda because I plain forgot to include it on the memo on the agenda, but I'll pull it up again here.
Packet docs.
Yeah, it's just in the packet docs for the previous meeting. So if you give me 1 second, I can pull that up again.
I will say temporary traffic calming, is still an issue. I know we've done a lot in certain areas, but, on the west side, it still sucks.
Well, I assume everybody saw the no left
I
turn
think with
sign.
Paul leaving, we can get lights on Marvin Road.
Okay, so these were the priorities that you guys talked about again. Greenways and connectivity. And last time, if you recall, it was really just a brainstorming session. Some people came with ideas, and some ideas were thought of at the meeting. And the lighting plan was one of those things. You talked about lighting at that time. In fact, request lights on Marvin Road was specifically something that was talked about. Branding, flooding, village center, traffic calming, land use plan, and greenways and connectivity. Those are some pretty good priorities there. And of course, if you look at this list and say this is still a priority for us, that's a pretty good place to start. If you come up with new priorities, that's great too.
Well, we can write one of them off. We completed the land use.
Yes. Completing the land use plan is great.
Right,
Major
5 years.
Right. Major props to all of everyone who pitched in some way or form to that. A 3-page text document was updated into a very, beautiful 50-page plan that will definitely guide the future for years to come. Good job.
Regarding the flooding we've seen a lot of roads, and I think everybody who's driving on Marvin Road notices it, but we have that big flooding issue, and John, you spoke to it before on what causes that flooding. As a government, isn't it something that the council and the mayor can address with whomever, if it's Charlotte or the state, because there's nothing being done about that big puddle. It's not in Marvin.
You talking about over in Mecklenburg County? Or,
Yes.
Well, that was one thing I forgot to mention to you. Next time you talk to DOT, can you ask them, because Mecklenburg is not part of our region as far as the DOT office, is it?
That's correct. I think it's like Union and Anson County.
Yeah, so if you could ask them who to talk to, I can tell you exactly what caused it, but they haven't done anything in 30+ years about it.
Yeah, I think if we, as a government, if we put pressure on whoever's responsible for, because John, can you explain it again? I can't remember what it was.
Well, what happened when in 1984 or whenever it was, when Mecklenburg County decided to build the foxhole,
That's right.
the dump, they decided that they needed to build this nice landscaping berm and put pretty bushes on it. Those are real nice bushes, everybody I'm sure agrees that are all grown. So what happened is it blocked the drainage in that low spot. They didn't put a pipe through it, they didn't, change the ditch configuration or anything. And there's no place for that rainwater to go other than soak into the ground eventually.
Yeah, it
thank
caused
God
damage to
there's
the
that
road.
middle section in the road,
Huh?
because I said, thank God there's that kind of middle section.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because all of us have to go around it, so it's like, and the only people that are passing that, we call it truck pass, that's what we named it, my family, but, is they're either going to that little park there, that little 4 Mile Creek walkway, whatever that thing is, or they're going to Marvin, so I agree, I think we should put pressure on.
Yeah, like I said, we just.
Better riding can't be.
find out the right person.
That'll be our action item for every meeting until it's finished. How about that?
But
Austin, that'll be our
I can't
action
even,
item.
I don't even know where the
I got
office
Sorry,
is.
sorry, what was that? A couple of people were talking at the same time.
I said that'll be our action item every meeting until it's fixed.
Talking about the flooding?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's on here.
okay.
Anyway,
So flooding issues is still a concern, is what I'm
Where's this even
hearing.
at?
Huh?
Where's
That's
it
been fixed.
It's on Marvin Road, just across the county line.
yeah,
at? Don't go that
You don't
way.
go that way, right?
Not often.
Yeah.
and the only
Not when it's
other,
raining.
Mhm.
slightly flooding area, which I don't know that's that big,
I stand
is on
like-
Joe Carr.
Yeah,
Right there about where, just down from,
yeah,
is it
I know it's,
Pacer or where?
yeah, just around Pacer, there's a big,
Yeah.
valley in the road and water collects there. It's still an issue, and it's, I guess, a low priority for DOT, but, some of this, how to, large-scale fix, flooding issues is something that Union County is looking, into on a, county level, so, for progress on that, at least the council is supporting Union County's attempts to study how to fix those issues.
And the more development there is, the more the problem, more
Yeah.
it creates because of runoff.
For sure.
Even with the, detention facilities, it's still.
Hmm.
Uh,
And I know we've heard this before, but what about the traffic circle at Marvin?
Hmm. Hmm.
Had a wreck there the other day. My kids been in a wreck there. It's just.
What now?
He's talking, yeah.
Flooding.
Mhm.
There's your way to die.
Right. So you're talking about that pothole at Marvin Road, or just in general that you?
The main pothole.
Right.
It's appropriately prioritized by council and, is to me,
Mhm.
the diet.
Right. I will say, I will add it as the priority here. But just so you know, it is a very high priority for council and staff to see if we can expedite it. It's not going to be expedited any sooner than summer of 22, but we're going to see if we can
Didn't,
make that happen.
Didn't Kim say something like if DOT is waiting for the summer because of school concerns,
Mhm.
they want us to encourage them to go as soon as they have the money for it, and not wait till summer.
Yeah, but even then, the schedule kind of puts us at summer 22 if we get all our ducks in a row right now.
Okay.
The problem is that after a few years of being delayed, the right of way now costs more than it did before when we had set out a specific number of dollars for it. So that's our current holdup. We're trying to make sure that doesn't hold up the project from its current anticipated construction of summer 22. So it is a very high priority, but I will also, put it on the list of priorities to reiterate to the council that, you also believe that it should continue to be a high priority.
Just FYI, everybody's well aware of the monster pothole at that intersection now.
Right.
If you want to try to turn and go towards South Carolina.
We have a resident that likes to call it the man-eating pothole.
Yeah, well,
The Lake of Marvin.
I think I found out why DOT has not done anything about it short of throwing a little bit of gravel in it periodically, which lasts less than a week before it's thrown out. I think the reason they don't want to fix it better is it would then create a second traffic lane there, which would probably maybe create more problems than it solves.
Did you hear that from someone, or is that a guess?
From Christina.
Ah, okay. Sounds good.
So, and I don't necessarily agree with that because it's a major problem, but I can at least now understand why they haven't done anything.
I know this isn't necessarily a planning board thing, but it does go to traffic calming, but the speeds on Newtown Road
Mm-hmm.
are just out of control, and it's one of the reasons why the intersection is so dangerous is the people coming from South Carolina going up the hill out to Melinda's house they're doing 45 miles an hour, and you're on a blind, like, you can't see, and it's
Have
just,
they
it's
changed
just
the speed
makes
limit
it
sign
hard.
yet?
No, it's still
35?
It's still 35, and it's being enforced more often now that we have 2 officers and we have them 7 days a week. So I'll add that here: speeding on Marvin Newtown Road. Sorry, and
Yeah, they're still considering the Newtown Road petition.
right, and if Marvin Council takes over Newtown Road, we can implement a lower speed limit and catch people speeding doing 35.
We can also put in traffic calming devices.
Exactly. We could do whatever is, engineering wise safe for
Yeah, I
the
don't
level
know
of
that-
traffic for that road, but
Changing the sign's not going to affect anything.
no, it's not. I mean, I just saw a kid fly into a tree. There was this kid's car was just at Meadowlark Lane, just kind of flipped over into a tree. It was just like earlier, maybe this week or last week.
Yeah.
Did anyone else see that?
I don't think the sheriff's office for road getting up on Newtown.
I can't hear it.
Can't hear it.
Sorry, what was that, Kent?
I was just saying, I would pull the sheriff's office, Joe Kerr put up on Newtown. The cops are always, sheriff's office, they're on,
Mm-hmm.
they're also.
You said you see the sheriffs more often on Joe Carr Road.
Oh, absolutely, they're there all the time.
Well,
I mean, if they just set up themselves right at Meadowlark, we'd make so much money in tickets.
mhm.
We've told them, you please use Meadowlark. You can sit there all day long and stop people.
They
but
do camp out on
I-
Newtown
I
Road.
requested-
Yeah, I've seen them
I said
camping.
several years ago for them to put up some, one of the flashing, this is your speed
Mhm.
sign coming up on that hill, just so that people are aware of their speed. A lot of people, like, I get tailgated, I will drive no more than 39. It pisses so many people off, but I'm like, no, like, y'all need to learn. So, anyway. But traffic calming is like number one.
Mhm.
But, like I said, signs that by themselves don't do anything.
Yeah.
We have the new no left turn sign, and I've gone through that intersection now twice during the no left turn period since it went up, and I've seen cars turn left both times.
Dorota, that's on the MHD
So,
committee, she's
signs
emailed me
don't,
saying the same
you know,
thing today.
You got to have
I
enforcement.
myself have seen it. I was sitting there for 10 seconds trying to turn left onto Newtown Road, and I saw 2 people turning left onto Marvin Road.
Yeah.
So I don't know about signs, but they all. But on that note, that was discussed at the council meeting last week, and Christina is going to talk to the sheriffs about enforcing that sign.
Well, the
Council's
sheriff was
really-
not there. This was like at 3:35 and 4 o'clock, and they don't get there until 4:30, 5 o'clock or something.
Yeah, but even then, I saw people turning left, and
Yeah.
there were the traffic cops were just sitting there
Oh, they were
letting it happen. So anyway,
Anyway,
we know that sign's not being followed and enforced, but we're Christina's going to talk to the sheriff about it. Is where we're at with that.
The council's already been talking about most of these issues pretty
Yeah.
at length, yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
definitely a good thing for a planning board to
Mhm.
reaffirm that these are priorities. And now we don't have to come up with the whole list right now, but you can keep talking about it as long as you think of more things that you want to add to the list or reaffirm some of the things that are on the list from last year. Let's see.
well,
Got flooding, traffic, the roundabout, and speeding and other traffic calming measures so far.
yeah.
Don't forget the lights.
Yeah, the lights.
Street lights.
Mm-hmm.
And don't call me, Paul, when they go up.
Making sure they're the really old, ugly ones that are stuck on wooden poles.
Yeah, I think what they did, they just put them on the existing, the lamp or the existing poles out there, so it'll look real pretty. Just like the street signs in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay. anything else?
I mean, is there a village center related priorities, or can I just grab the from the discussion that we had earlier? Just kind of keep moving.
I'm not sure where our next direction is. I think we need
I
something.
thought we thought that council had to get with
Yeah.
the
I think we need some more,
landowners and see what they want to do with it.
the
Sure.
next direction from council as far as what they want us to do regarding, the heritage district.
That would be a great conversation to have at that joint meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's no need in us just spinning wheels for the sake of spinning wheels without it being productive.
Right. Okay. Anything else?
Nothing else? Paul, we need to have a conversation. If I'm not gonna twist your arm suitably to make you stay on next year. I think you may or may not know that they have ordered suitable plaque of appreciation for you. And maybe at the
March regular meeting, I think,
regular council meeting.
March
which is
9th.
March 9th, if you would be available.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
But I'm still not ready to let you go.
What if we offered him a 1-year term? So just help us get through the freaking Heritage District, and then we'll let you go. We won't hold you for the whole free.
Well, so
As the clerk, I must object.
more than a year.
But Paul's going, if nothing else, you will have to agree to be, available for phone calls at every meeting because you're the historian for the planning board. This is what we discussed 10 years ago.
Paul, did you first join the planning board in 2007? That's what my records were showing.
I don't recall when it was, but I wouldn't be stunned by that.
That's 14 years. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
But
Mm-hmm.
like I said,
I struggle to find
am
records.
truly
with
going
my
to miss you.
Thank you.
Is this your last meeting? Or March 9th?
It's this one.
I assume that'd be
It's
a
this one.
March meeting, and that would be it.
This one?
Paul's term expires March 1st, so this is technically the last one as a member.
Oh, okay.
Why did we have drinks? Why aren't we passing out cake?
I've made that argument before.
Everybody go get a beer.
Or go to bed?
Okay, yeah.
We'll have to find a time when everything breaks free that we'll get together with Paul. I
Yeah.
highly recommend that.
Thank you.
Action items.
All right, I got a couple. Rohit will, now tell me if this is correct, will remove language from the village ordinances that allow subdivisions to have gates. We still doing that?
Yeah, that
Okay.
was an action item.
You will talk to NCDOT about flooding on Marvin Road. That was one from a few minutes ago.
Wow,
I'll
that's.
find out who.
We didn't have any action items between that and. this.
And I thought there was a second one with the gates, but I didn't
No,
quite get
just,
it.
I mean, other than to, keep those applications moving to council, keep the Village Hall project moving back to the DRB, convey, also just, maybe this doesn't have to be an action item, but to convey that, the consensus here is to work with the community and HOA for the sign poles and
We're good
potentially
on
put it
that.
on existing
Yeah.
poles, okay?
I've already talked to Christina.
And the conveyance to council about planning board's opinion on DFI presentation and the next steps for the Heritage District.
I'll add that one.
Yeah, those are my action items between. Yeah. yeah, and then I guess, for planning board to maybe, if you think you're done with the priorities, that's fine, but then just continue to think about, you know, you live in Marvin, what would you like to see both as a resident and as a planning board member to be, thought about in the next, like as a, what should our government focus on in the next year? It's, if they, you know, think about anything else, you can add it to the list to talk about, at the joint meeting, and respond to the doodle poll if you haven't. Those are action items for the board members.
You
All right.
know,
Doodle
Thanks
poll.
for having me.
Doodle poll.
Okay,
Let's get the board member comments and then.
yeah, we'll start with
Adjourn.
Paul. Anything? It's your last meeting?
Well, I didn't know it was that many years, but it's flown by. I very much enjoyed the time that I've spent on the board. We all probably talk a little too much, but we are an example of good governance. I truly believe that, and I'm very, very proud of it. There have been arguments and discussions on some controversial issues, and yet I think this board has shown respect for one another throughout it. Again, I'm very proud of having served here. And if you look at Marvin, and I moved here in 1996, you know, you can be very, very proud of the work that you've done in terms of the development of this town. It has really come together very, very nicely. It could have gone badly at times, and, you know, people like yourselves just didn't let it happen. So I'm very pleased to have been here, and I pass the reins on to others for to carry on the battle. And again, I thank you all for all your respect and kindness over the years.
Thank you. Michael? Michael, any comment?
Yeah, well, I've served with Paul for many years, and he's seen a lot. And the village has been through a lot and grown a lot, and Paul has always been an absolute true professional, and one we've always turned to and trusted for his opinions. And you certainly, my friend, will be missed.
Thank you.
Kelly?
You said me, right?
Yeah.
You know, I agree with Mike. Paul is a class act. You're incredibly intelligent and bring up things that, you know, none of the rest of us have ever, you know, are thinking about. And it's been a pleasure, and I've learned a lot from you, and I hope that we get to see you in you know, personal life at some point. Our paths cross.
In non-pandemic times.
Yeah, non-pandemic times.
Okay, Kent?
Yeah, so, Paul never met in person, but, you know, congratulations, it's been a great run, and, I feel we can, do for all.
I couldn't make that out.
Said never met Paul in person, but it was a great run.
Melinda?
So it sounds, Paul, I mean, if you've been here since 1996, and you're one of the, you know, basically one of the founding members of the village now, because I don't think there's a whole lot of us left from that era. And so as someone who loves this town enough to have come back and decided to raise my family here, thank you so much for helping preserve what Marvin is, what is loved for. So I hate that we don't get to spend more time, because having that institutional and historical wisdom is priceless. And if I may suggest, in the academy, we don't let people retire. We promote them to emeritus and allow them to come and go as they please with sabbaticals and all kinds of other opportunities. So maybe that's what you want to do, is just grace us with your presence occasionally and your wisdom, and then not come when you prefer not to. So just consider it. Maybe we have a board member emeritus position that opens up at this point.
That's like every other citizen, right?
Okay, our council liaison, Bob, if you're still awake, and do you have anything that you'd like to comment on tonight's meeting?
Yeah, I'll take you off the hook there, Paul, because I guess I'm the emeritus. You know, I'm the one that comes and goes, you know, whatever we please, so I'll kind of represent you, okay? Follow me and then let me know what, you know, I can tell you when I'm on. No, I was gonna say that, first off, you know, over the past year of being involved, as the liaison, as everybody has had wonderful thoughts, you have had especially a lot of wisdom that you've been able to contribute. And I've learned from it personally. I mean, you see that I'm quiet, I'm here, I'm listening to everything everybody's saying. And it helped me a lot in terms of, in fact, I enjoy being on the planning board liaison because it helps me when I go into the council meetings. I know exactly what you're thinking. I know exactly where you're coming from. So thank you for your contribution. You did a great job.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Yourself?
I think I covered myself earlier, on several things, but, you know, once again, I'm gonna really miss you. Not only your historic, you know, input, but, I keep saying your wordsmithing. You can just automatically, this is the way we ought to say it, and also everybody says, yeah, that's right. So,
I'm gonna miss that too.
thanks a lot. Thanks everybody tonight. And
Paul, why don't you give us the honors of, move to adjourn?
I would like to make the following motion, that the planning board for Village of Marvin come to a close for the evening of, what's today, the 16th?
16.
I'll second.
At 9:46.
Third,
Who was the
All right,
second? Sorry.
Michael Bell
Michael.
seconded it.
Thank you.
All right, all in favor? Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.